the Committee on the Disabled and Person with Special Needs Committee hearing. I'm going to ask the clerk to read the resolution number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 160932, a resolution authorizing the Committee on the Disabled and Persons with Special Needs to hold hearings regarding services for people with disabilities and general compliance with and enforcement of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you. We're going to get the hearing started in a few moments. I would like to note for the record that we have a quorum of this committee. Myself, the chair of the committee, Councilman Derek Green. To my left, the vice chair of the committee, Councilwoman Helen Gim. To her left, another committee member, Councilman Al Tonberger. And then to my right, Councilwoman Cindy Bass, which constitutes a quorum of this committee. I'm thankful that all of you are able to be here this afternoon. This is a conversation that has been coming for some time. Too often, this conversation is not had in City Council or in City Government about how we can do a better job in reference to the Americans with Disabilities Act. In fact, I don't even like the phrase disability. I often use the phrase, and many people have heard me say the word difference, because I think we all have different abilities, and some of us are tall, some of us are short, some of us lack some hair, but we all have various differences. And I don't necessarily like the phrase disability, because I think we all have unique abilities in doing different things, and we both as a city, state, and a nation should do a better job in that regard. And so today's conversation provides an opportunity to have that conversation. And so with that, we will start the hearing. Our first panel, we have Nolan Atkinson and Charles Horton.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Nolan Atkinson, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the City of Philadelphia. I'm going to make some very brief opening remarks and then turn it over to Charles Horton, who will speak in a little bit more, and I'm certainly available to answer questions. Chairman Green and members of the Committee on the Disabled Persons with Special Needs. I'm Nolan Atkinson, appointed by the Mayor to hold the position of Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. I'm here to provide testimony on Resolution 160932 regarding services for people with disabilities pursuant to the Americans with Disabilities Act. Joining me, as I've said, is Charles Horton, Executive Director of the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. This administration is taking a fresh approach to the development and implementation of policies and practices that promote the well-being of and opportunity for people with disabilities. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion, established in January 2016, oversees issues that impact minorities, people with disabilities, and those who identify as LGBTQ. Iola Harper, the Director of Office of OEO, Charles Horton, appointed by the Mayor, is the Executive Director of the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. Helen Fitzpatrick is the Director of LGBT Affairs. Each of these offices have day-to-day responsibilities in addition to providing vital connections between the communities and city government. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion works with these offices to set priorities. This approach permits more efficient workflows, better allocation of resources, and deliberate and systematic approach to the inclusion of all people. In facilitating more efficient and comprehensive workflows, This administration is devoting greater attention and resources to issues impacting people with disabilities than previously existed. For example, the Assistant Diversity Officer for Research and Policy, Nefertari Seacoat, who sits behind me, commits a significant amount of her time supporting Mr. Horton by gathering data and conducting legal research on pressing issues faced by people with disabilities in this city. The goal of their collaboration is to establish a solid foundation for recommending and advancing targeted policies and practices that promote the full inclusion, quality of life, and economic well-being of people with disabilities throughout the city. Chance Tolan Wilson also provides the executive director with ongoing administrative support. With respect to establishing targeted policies, our first course of action centers on gathering information on the development and implementation of policies, programs, and practices in comparable jurisdictions that affect people with disabilities. The purpose of this research is to help establish high-priority initiatives for city programs for people with disabilities. Our office has reviewed specific issues involving people with disabilities in a variety of jurisdictions. As a result of this review and input from Mr. Horton and others, we are now determining the best methodology for investigating all city programs as to access for people with disabilities. Once our analysis is complete, we should be able to report to this committee and the public on additional action steps for the city regarding access for people with disabilities in connection with city programs and services. This is a first step on a long road of making the city more accessible for the many thousands of residents and citizens with disabilities. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and the other members of council on these issues. Charles Horton, who handles day-to-day operations, will now provide you with a brief summary of his responsibilities. Upon his conclusion, we are both happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Good afternoon, Councilman Green, Councilwoman Vaz, Councilwoman Ginn, and Councilman Taubenberger. I'm here to provide testimony on Resolution 160932. My name is Charles Horton. I'm the Executive Director for the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. The Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities was reestablished effective October 2014 by Executive Order 0914. The Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities has 13 commission members appointed by the Mayor. The operation of the commission is to provide the Mayor on existing and proposed programs and services and projects related to people with disabilities, to aid in the development of programs for services for people with disabilities, to ensure the rights and privileges of people with disabilities by promoting compliance with civil rights legislation and policies, to promote self-advocacy, self-awareness, and independence for people with disabilities, and to assist people with disabilities through referral, information, direct services. As the Executive Director for the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities, I administer support and help set for priorities on to the Commission members and provide strategic guidance to the members in carrying out our initiatives. In this role, I've seen extraordinary people do amazing things. In June 2016, the Commission collaborated with many organizations to support the Disability Pride Parade and Celebration. In September 2016, the Commission collaborated with Global Abilities to host the 6th annual Rec Fest at Carousel House Recreation Center. To date, Rec Fest has exposed over 4,000 people to adaptive sports and have been expanded to other cities such as Baltimore and Harrisburg. In October 2016, the Commission held the 20th anniversary of the Access Achievement Awards Brunch and Oliver H.M. Jordan Scholarship for Students with Disabilities, where many members of this committee supported us. To date, under my leadership as the Executive Director, we've raised $78,000 in support and scholarship funding, and we supported 30 8 students with $44,000 in scholarship funding and granted 39 Access Achievement Awards. In addition to serving as the Executive Director of the Commission, I work to resolve ADA grievances against the city, investigate the compliance of city programs, policies, and procedures, and to provide support and accessibility standards for programs. Today is the day for the community of people with disabilities to share our goals and to create a city of inclusion and respect. We are members of an extraordinary community of people with disabilities, advocates, supporters who are here today to present ideas of inclusion in all aspects of life. I would like to thank the many advocacy organizations, members of the community of people with disabilities, members of the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities, and City Council for your support. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'd like to let the record reflect that we're also joined by a member of the committee to my right, Councilwoman Sherelle Parker. I want to thank both of you for your testimony. Mr. Atkinson, thank you for making comments about a fresh and new approach that this administration has taken. Mr. Horton, you have been an executive director for this commission for a number of years, and you're almost an army unto yourself, considering all the work that you get done by yourself and with limited staff. And I know this time of year, since we are in December, various city departments are communicating with the finance director and other parts of administration as they prepare for next year's budget process. So I guess for the record, if you could state what your current budget is in your role, and actually how many staff members that you have.
Well, my budget is $14,000, and I'm the only staff that is dedicated to the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities.
Councilwoman again.
Thank you very much. Good morning,
How are you?
or good afternoon, rather. So, Mr. Horton, how has your budget changed since you've been in office? I know you've been there for a number of years, but how has your budget over time changed?
It hasn't changed directly in additional funding at all.
So you came in with $14,000?
Yes, and it stayed $14,000.
And how long ago was that?
I've been in the office for 10 years, but I've been executive director for 5.
Okay.
Yes.
And had you in prior years put forward a request for additional money from the city for your commission?
Yes, I have.
And how much have you asked for?
It's been all the way up to $1.5 million to $500,000 to $250,000. So it's been different asks based on staff and projects that I want to perform as the executive director for the
And
commission.
if you had to articulate out your top 2 or 3 project priorities that would require additional funding supports, what would they be?
For city to look at city buildings and programs to make sure that they're accessible so that we can fully support and serve the community of people with disabilities in a way that is respectful and open up inclusion in all aspects of city government, and that's employment, services, projects, and procedures.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for all the work that you've done, and especially that this is one of the areas that just feels like it needs to cut across a whole heap of departments and agencies, that disabilities shouldn't just be isolated in one particular area or anything, but that we have to review the totality of our city services, our infrastructure, and other things in light of how we serve all of our communities. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Great.
Good, good. So I was going to ask you some questions in terms of finding ways that the commission could do more, particularly in terms of connecting the dots of, we know that there's a need here. So for example, we know that there's not enough housing for people with different abilities.
Yes.
And so how do we get to a point where we have enough housing? What's the goal? What's the number? What's the plan? And so I had this whole line of questioning set up. But then when I realized your budget was $14,000, I realized why we haven't been able to move the ball at all.
Yes.
And so, it would be my suggestion, I'm just going to say it out loud, and I don't mind, getting myself in all kinds of trouble, but this budget is unacceptable. It's just completely unacceptable to do the kind of work that needs to be done. And I'm not blaming you, because you know this, because you put in additional requests, but it really does leave us at a loss of how do we even move this any further, move the issue any further with a $14,000 budget. It's outrageous. And so, like I said, I have to sort of start from scratch with all of my questions, because none of the things that I'm going to propose or suggest or would like to see implemented can be done based on the budget that you have. It's just not possible. Nolan?
Yes, ma'am. If I could just add, in terms of the approach that we have put in place, and really we've only put that in place last winter, last spring. We have a situation where the person in my office who is an attorney, I would say, has spent 50% of her time, or just about 50% of her time, on issues that are involved with Mr. Horton's office. And they are strategic issues as to approaches and what we should be doing to strategically bring about change in the city. Those are in fruition, and I look forward, as soon as we have something specific and definite, of coming back to this committee, as I said in my testimony, and being able to report how that's been accomplished.
I would agree with you. We need to be strategic, and we need to be thoughtful, and we need to plan what it is that we are trying to do, and trying to set some realistic goals and outcomes, and then a path, a plan to get there. But with $14,000, we can't even get there. We can't even begin to think strategically with a budget like that. And so, I can just say right off the bat that this is clearly going to be a budget priority, I think, for a number of members of council, if not all of the council next year. This budget is just completely unacceptable. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me just say good afternoon to each of you. I too want to add my sentiments to the record, Charles, regarding your longevity and the work that you have done with such limited resources. My grandmother used to have a saying that people who are innovative know how to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less, and you put that to bed, right? Because you've actually done more then obviously should be humanly expectable with the budget that you are allotted. So I wanted to say thank you for that, and agree that this issue of persons who are disabled and who have special needs, that I think it is something that I have at different times heard all members of council expressing a concern about, and will make a priority. My question to you is one that I always ask when we're dealing with any kind of department, I don't care if it's state and or local, is that we know what's wrong. Tell me, based on your communication with people in similar roles in different cities and or in different states, what other cities or states would you consider to be ahead of the curve that Philadelphia could use as a model to say, if we would do it more like, I want Philadelphia to be the best at everything, but there's some people who are ahead of us in certain areas. So cities and or states, and even within the city of Philadelphia right now, what department, agency, building would you say has made the greatest strides?
Well, when you look at different cities who, would you say, a little bit ahead of the game than us, we have to look at the systematic of what is the natural infrastructure of those cities, and when you play how they're better than us, because they might have certain things where the snow removal may be better than ours because they get more snow than us. So it's kind of difficult to say what city is doing better than us, but there's a lot of cities who have a broader staff than we do. Yeah, and they're with the different responsibilities that I hold. They have individuals who 3 or 4 people who do different titles, because most of you know I have a bunch of different titles, where they have a few people doing 1 or 2 things under that title, and they have people employed on those titles. So, I mean, Chicago has over 20-something people on staff. New York, I think there's 15. So when you look at the number of people that they have on staff, then you have to look at the natural infrastructure things that they naturally do, and so it's kind of hard. I don't want to compare them to say that they're better than us, because we have things that they can't do, and we're better than them, even with the 1-person staff. So I don't like to say anybody better than us.
I agree with you.
That's Philadelphia. That's Philadelphia. You know, we don't like to say anybody better than us. But I think it's really important to look at some of the things that they have in place that we can kind of pull from them, that is not that we are the same and we are like. So that is some of the things that we are doing with the administration now, is to look at other cities and see what they have so that we can make Philadelphia better. And that's some of the projects that with Nolan is supporting, Nefertari, and the mayor's office and administration. We're looking at that to see how we can make ourselves better.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Parker. Councilman Tomberger?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. Mr. Horton, especially you, I thank you for your service.
Okay.
When you first said, when the question was asked, what is your budget, and you said $14,000, I thought something was wrong with my hearing. I was about to ask my colleague, Councilwoman Ginn, if that's actually what you said, but then you said it again, and my hearing improved at that moment. And I can't believe that number, and as was said earlier, that is unacceptable. I mean, Mr. Chairman, I think one of the things this committee must do is to make sure that this department is better funded, because you can't do much with anything with that little resources. I don't think there's a major city in America that has a department that is of such consequence as this one, running on such a small budget. So I am dedicating myself to support you to get the dollars you need to get the job done, because I think it's important. It's important that all people are treated equally and have equal access, so they can develop and live life to its fullest, to work if they wish or if they want to, and to do the things that everyone else can do with the least amount of impairment. We're in a position to help. Technology can help, and we're also here to help. So I thank you for this, being involved in this hearing, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for the resolution. I was honored to co-sponsor it with you, and we wanted to know where we can be of the greatest help.
Great, thank you.
No question, unless you want to comment on my comment.
No, as you always know, when I see each one of you, and I always say, whatever you need, let me know. I'm always have an open door, and I always want to meet with you to better what's going on in your districts and your offices, so that we can make Philadelphia a better place. So if you ever want to meet with me to really talk about what's going on, we, Nolan, and the administration will really be glad to support, and we thank you for supporting us moving forward.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Horton, can you provide for the committee your full title?
Okay. I am the Executive Director, Accessibility Compliance Specialist, and the ADA Coordinator for the City of Philadelphia.
Okay, that's quite a...
It's a tongue twister.
Right. As I stated to you at this year's breakfast, you're definitely, in my mind, the hardest working man in the city of Philadelphia when you have all those titles. And then I know there are various groups that will be testifying later today who are providing some of this information regarding what's happening in other cities, so I don't necessarily want to steal their thunder. But one of the things I was trying to accomplish by today's hearing is to elevate the conversation regarding the lack of funding that your office has. That's why in our conversations over the past year, we strategically wanted to have this hearing at this time as the various departments are putting together their budgets as we go into January, starting for the next budget session. And so that's why I thought it was very important to have this hearing at this time so we can let other members of council know regarding the constraints that you have from a budgetary perspective, and use this as a way to begin the conversation so we can be on a better peer level compared to other cities across the country. So I thank you for your testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to our next panel. I want to call up Tom Earl, Liberty Resources, Alan Holdsworth, Sean Along, and Bill Krebs. And we'll go in that order. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Earl, then Mr. Holdsworth, then Mr. Long, and then Mr. Krebs.
Committee Chair Green and other members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name's Tom Earl. I'm the CEO of Liberty Resources. I'm also the chair of the Council on Independent Living in Pennsylvania, as well as the chair commissioner of the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations. And my testimony today will focus on the handout that I've provided to each of you, which will sadly reflect and support the comments that Councilwoman Bass and Parker have made, that a operation or program within any city as minuscule as this is really an insult to the disability community. And sadly, this has persisted, this isn't a recent phenomenon. The ADA was passed in 1990, 26 years ago. And here we are in 2016 talking about what should be a major office of any large urban city being funded with $14,000, one full-time employee and one part-time employee. So that reality is not something that's new to Philadelphia. And for purposes of illustration, because the city does have money, and to show that, I have shown examples of other city operations, other commissions in my materials. For example, if we turn to page 2, we'll see that the Office of Homeless Services, that's headed up by Director Hirsch, has well over 10 staff. On page 3, the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations that I'm the chair of has multiple staff, an executive director, several deputy directors, and commissioners who are paid for their services by each meeting that they attend. When I was appointed to be chair of the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations by Mayor Nutter, I did not accept the $55,000 a year salary that had historically come with that. One, because I thought it was a conflict, or could appear as a conflict, with my full-time duties at Liberty Resources, but more importantly, that money could better be used for an additional staff person, which was accomplished. If you turn to page 4, you'll see the Mayor's Commission on Literacy, which has 14-member commissioners and several staff. And then on page 5, the Mayor's Commission on Aging has 18 commissioners, a program director, and Mr. Gonzalez with numerous staff under him. Then on the last page, sadly, page 6, we see the current roster for the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities, with Charles at the top, and his assistant Fanny, who's wonderful, working as his administrative assistant, and 12 commissioners that currently reside on the commission. This really reflects poorly given the size of the city. There are close to 200,000 residents with disabilities, many baby boomers who are now in their 60s and 70s are acquiring age-related disabilities. So the need for housing that is accessible and integrated, services and programs for people with disabilities, and employment opportunities for people with disabilities should be top priorities for this administration and the City Council. Yet, I did hear Mr. Atkinson reference that Charles has support from other people in the administration, which may be so, but something that one would like to know is how integrated is the city's workforce when it comes to people with intellectual disabilities, autism, other cognitive disabilities, mental health, physical disabilities. It would be nice to know by each city department how many people are employed who are people with disabilities. Liberty Resources, which is unique, has over 53% of its staff are people with disabilities, and over 80% of our board of directors are people with disabilities. And while that's our mission, it is a good comparison of how it can be done. These are folks who are working full-time and doing great work and pushing on advocacy issues, as many of you know, the Adaptive Mod program, which we were very happy to see or hear yesterday, that this will be extended to include tenants, and we applaud Councilwoman Parker for that, and Council President. The Adaptive Mod program has a huge waiting list, seniors and people with disabilities, many of whom do not own homes. These are folks who are typically on Social Security disability income, very fixed, low monthly income, who can't afford to put a stair glide in or grab bars in a bathroom. So expanding the bond issue yesterday to include tenants is a step in the right direction. But there's a lot more that can be done, and just want to note there was a question, I believe, on what other cities are doing. And in my materials, hang on one second. I think on page 7, there's a very good comparison showing quite clearly how other cities are staffing and budgeting their commissions on people with disabilities. And we can see, sadly, it's very likely that we come in last. I wouldn't be surprised if the city of Harrisburg invests more money on disability issues than the city of Philadelphia. But Chicago is the mother lode. It has 27 staff, and you can see from the organizational chart that I provided with my testimony how comprehensive the services are that office offers. And another shortcoming, many kudos to Executive Director Chuck Horton. Derek, as you have pointed out both at the breakfast and today, he wears many hats. And expecting one person to be able to fulfill so many roles and responsibilities is irresponsible. Irresponsible on City Council that oversees the budget for the city and the administration. Businesses routinely open in Philadelphia with architectural barriers at the front door. No city that opens a new operation in the city of Philadelphia, no business that opens a new operation in Philadelphia should be able to open their doors to the public until the city licensing and inspection department confirms that they have, in fact, complied with the architectural barrier-free requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But it's hard to do that with a one-arm paper hanger. And that sadly is the burden that is on Charles' shoulders when he tries to do all the things. And we try to help as much as we can at Liberty Resources and other organizations. Another issue that I think was very evident is the recent fiasco around the Philadelphia Parking Authority and efforts for the city of Philadelphia to come up with a uniform policy and request to the Philadelphia delegation of the state legislature on what the needs are for accessible taxi transportation in the city. Of the many cities, Philadelphia is probably in last place. We're going to hear about that in great detail. But Liberty Resources and the disabled community, many of the folks who are here today, repeatedly asked the mayor and Vaughn Ross, the deputy director in the mayor's office, for a meeting with the mayor's office and key city council members to come up and come together and brainstorm on what fair legislation would look like. That didn't happen. We ended up having to work directly with State Representative Jamie Santora to ensure that at least some of the wheelchair accessible vehicles would be required with TNCs like Uber and Lyft. And the number is still very unacceptable, but at least it's something. And Councilman Taubenberg is very familiar with the Parking Authority and its efforts, largely fueled by the pressure of the disabled community to increase the number of accessible taxis in Philadelphia. So, in short, I hope these diagrams and charts comparing the Mayor's Commission for People with Disabilities to other city agencies and commissions are helpful to illustrate what Charles has said and what I am saying. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Earl. We'll next go to my friend from down under, Mr. Holsworth.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and all the rest of the committee. It's nice to be here. I want to talk, I've been crossing things off, which Tom's been sort of already mentioned, but I'll probably mention them again a little bit. I want to talk about moving from, I used to be a policy advisor, I used to be the chief advisor to the Mayor of Birmingham in England, so I do kind of get this. It's different in America. One of the things we did there, I worked with a very famous professor, Mike Oliver, and we examined how the Birmingham City Council delivered its services to disabled people. And we found that there was three kind of distinct approaches. The first approach was what we called a humanitarian approach, which is basically giving people, here's a really crappy service, and you should be grateful. Right? An example of that would be probably something over here would be, I would think, paratransit, where you spend 2 hours on a segregated bus, and you're supposed to be grateful for it. The second approach would be what we call the compliance approach, which is basically, to sum up, is a tick box approach. You're not really there, you're kind of doing it begrudgingly because you have to. And this is like where you get all the lawyers come in and you tick the box and so on. But the approach that we really would like to sort of share with you is what we call the citizenship approach. And the citizenship approach says that disabled people in our city are equal citizens and have the same rights and responsibilities and opportunities as everybody else, and that we need to create policies which deliver that. And that should be our approach to policies. Tom just mentioned the research that we've been doing looking at other cities. I've looked at Chicago, which is 27 people. I've looked at Boston, which is 6. San Francisco has 7. New York, 40 plus. Couldn't really get a figure on New York, but that's a lot bigger city, we understand. And that was all I could get to in the time that I had. And then what I did then was look at what they do. I mean, I was really thinking, well, okay, what do the 27 people do in Chicago? And then also, what should they do? And although some of it's written down in their annual reports, when you actually telephone them, you find that they do other things which don't necessarily go into the report. So I'm just going to go through these very, very quickly as key tasks of a Mayor's Commission of People with Disabilities in Philadelphia, what it could look like. You need to have somebody who's advising people, creating and shaping policy. You need someone to be doing that. You need someone to be scrutinising policy. When I was in Birmingham in England, every single thing the council passed came through me first. And I said, well, what impact is that going to have on disabled people? And if I had a comment, I would make a comment. And then that would then go, up there. But that's like a full-time staff. Just let me say that. Policy development and all that's a full-time staff. Training. Every department needs constant training. People leave, you can join, so you're always on a never-ending bridge of painting a bridge of training staff, but also training council members as well to make sure that their language is correct, that they start to think about the policies in the way that we think about them. Then obviously ADA compliance for the city and the private sector. We need somebody who's actually working with the planning and the urban planning department, so that when you make a plan to do something, you do it right first time. Unlike the flags that we had, where we were still waiting for a ramp in February. So I mean that could have been done at the early stage, and you wouldn't have had to go back to it. So obviously people are going to mention a lot about housing. And we need more affordable, accessible, integrated housing, and we need to get a plan for that. That can't just be done by one member of staff and a part-time staffer. You can't do it. You're going to have a few people working on that in across departments. Emergency preparedness is one which is very common in every city. They have an emergency preparedness plan for people with disabilities. They do a lot of information and referral, so when the city council, somebody rings the city council up and it's not your job, you know where to send them to. So that would be kind of someone who can provide that kind of information. Charles does a very good job at the moment on community outreach. Everybody knows Charles Horton. So that is one of the sort of jobs which I think is being done well here. Employment policy. What is your employment policy? How do you recruit, retrain, and support disabled people getting jobs? How many disabled people as a percentage work in the city council as opposed to the population of 16%? Is it 16% of people working in the city council? What kind of strategies can you do to recruit and retain disabled people? Who's working on that? Plan to close Philadelphia nursing home, please. We've been trying to get this thing closed for 20 years. We need to have somebody fully dedicated to work with the nursing home, so we do that. We close that in a way which is humane and actually works, and we get the housing. That's a job. A plan, accessible information, making sure council information is accessible. And that means plain language, braille, and sign language, and everything else. Events and culture, making sure that disabled people like Disability Pride, we need, and Rec Fest and other things that Charles does, we need to be able to develop that, and also look at the way that things like the art museum reflects disability and stuff like that. So that's another part of the job. Not too many more. Complaints and resolution. When somebody complains to the council, how is it resolved? Yeah? How are those complaints noted and then built into the council policy? Coming up very soon, an actual plan for snow removal. Because disabled people are going to be totally trapped in their houses. The curb cuts are going to be all, snowed up, and we won't be able to get out of our vans because there'll be a big pile of snow on the side of the street. We're going to talk a lot about transportation. I'm sure in the next, I'm not going to touch that much, but yes, we do want accessible cabs, and we need to look at education. Now, that's about my list. There's probably more. I just want to tell you, when you take the citizenship approach, you say, well, there's a lot of barriers there. Some of them are systematic, some of them are environmental, and some of them are attitudinal. But if we keep those barriers there are consequences. And I just want to really quickly just say what the consequences are. So the consequences, if none of that's done, and it's not being done at the moment, here's the consequences. You've got no cohesive policy, untrained staff, unenforced laws, no housing, homelessness, incarceration, deaths in an emergency situation, unemployment, insufficient consultation leading to ignorance in policy making, not having the right to go from A to B, lack of information, lawsuits, disabled people invisible in the city, enforced segregation. That's what we were talking about. So that's why but those things can be changed. We're not going to get cured, but we can change those things. And now that you know it, at the moment, the Mayor's Commission on Disability is both a bottleneck, because we tell Charles everything, but he hasn't got the staff to do it. But it's also a buffer. It's nice to know the council's listening. But you can listen for as long as you want, but if you don't do anything, there's no point, and you won't be able to do anything unless you get resources. So, What we need to do, it's time for action, it's time to expand the workforce of the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. It's to give those workers and the Commission the resources necessary to do the job and begin to develop a comprehensive citywide policies to remove the barriers we encounter and the consequences we face. So we want the evidence that you're going to hear and you have heard in this hearing to be incorporated into future budget talks to expand the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities and address the issues arising from today. We would like to continue to work with you through that process, and we'd like transparency in that process. And I would like to thank you very, very much for listening to me for so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holdsworth. I want to thank you for you and some of the other members of your impromptu ad hoc committee working with my staff. I know you went through a voluminous amount of information to drill it down to this information with recommended steps, as well as giving us different ideas on the different type of models that could be helpful for the city of Philadelphia. So I want to thank you. With that, I want to kind of go through the rest of the testimony, and then we'll open up for other questions. I want to now ask Mr.
Excuse me, do you think I can go last?
Oh, you want to go last, Sean?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. All right, we'll go with
Thank you.
Mr. Bill Krebs.
I thank you for having me here, City Councilor. I'm here to testify for people like myself who have intellectual disabilities. But I don't see myself with a disability. I see myself with a possibility, things I can do, not what I can't do. So a lot of my friends here have disabilities, but we don't look at us just like that. We're like everybody else. We're taxpayers in this great Philadelphia. I'm here to testify as me as a child who's 52 years old, who's living with an aging parent, who's 83 this month, that we were afraid that if anything happens there, what happens to me? We're on fixed income. We make bills meet to meet, you know, and the taxes go up in the city. We know what it's pay for expenses. But if there are good programs out there like Charles's program, I don't mind my mother saying to pay for something like that to help myself, because if something happens to her, what do I wind up? People with disabilities wind up on the streets, wind up in institutions. We don't want them stuff around. Wind up, people with physical disabilities wind up in nursing homes because nobody can't take care of them, but they want to live independently as best they can. The other thing I'm talking about is day programs and the workshop programs where I came from, where I was there for 10 years. 3 years was great. It gave me social skills. It got me this voice that I'm talking now, and I was afraid to say anything. We used to put screws and nuts in a bag, and I tell people who's screwing who and who's nuts for doing this, because we used to get paid a penny a piece. It's true. People with disabilities don't have regular jobs in the community. If they are, they're hidden. Nobody wants to see them. You see them at your local supermarkets pushing shopping carts. Do I want that? When I told my job coach I really wanted the job, I wanted to work for the city, I thought as a South Advocate they could do that. No. As a South Advocate, you label yourself with a disability. So I looked, and my job coach one day pointed to the bathroom. He said, "I got your job with John." And he said, "You could scrub the toilets." And I thought that was pathetic. Here in this great city of Philadelphia, it's pitiful that we don't see people with disabilities have regular, meaningful jobs, meaningful housing that we can afford. Like I said, our taxes went up. They recessed our taxes for the houses. And how can me and my mother afford that? You know, we and other people with disabilities. It's a burden to this society. We're not. We're trying to do better for ourselves. And it's hard. And other things I have to say is there's other aging parents out there that are suffering, that don't have the basic needs. What's going to happen to them when they go? Who's going to raise their kids? You know, do we open our doors to everybody and help some or a few or mostly everybody? We should be the beacon of every city that we're going to do something about it. Like they said, nothing without me, because we're always lost somewhere. And the other thing I want to talk about is the Mayor's Commission on Disability. One person, if I went to his office and asked him for help, it's like being on a waiting list. He'll get to you when he can get to you. I'm sorry, I'm busy at this time, and it's not fair anymore. So I just want to say, my closing remark is, we need more housing for people with disabilities, more jobs for people with disabilities. Been here in the City Council, I don't see people with disabilities around working here behind this. Maybe they're behind the scenes, and they shouldn't be. It's like people being in the closet. They should come out and help Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Saul Ali Law, and I have cerebral palsy and a development disability. I also have an intellectual disability, and I'm also is a student at Temple University studying P-Law. First of all, to Councilman Green, to Charles Horton, and to the rest of the council. Thank you for inviting me to this public hearing. Before I get started, I just want to start off with a quote. Faith is taking the first step, even when you cannot see the whole staircase, and that's by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today, I'm not coming to speak just for myself. I'm coming to speak for people in my community. Many years ago, in the early 1900s, people with the disability was not even allowed to be in this community. We was sent away to institutions, and then we got out. Then, once we got out, the ADA Act passed, and all these bills passed. And yes, they have passed, but a lot of these policies need to be approved. A lot of these policies need to be redone. How can we call this the home of the free in a great country when people with disabilities is still on the waiting list, still to have the same opportunities as other people? How can we call this a city of brotherly love when you walk down the street sometime and people judge you and they don't know what's going on? I am saying this opportunity, we have to first of all get a system that will make this city for everybody, that will make this city the leader and the pioneer of the disability movement, because this is America's birthplace, right here in Philadelphia. We need to make sure that everybody knows, and that a disability is not a handicap, it's not a disease, but what it truly is, it's a God-given ability. It's a God-given ability. Not only that, we had to start having training for businesses so that when someone come into a store, they don't be looked at throughout the eye, but they can come up and be like, how can I help you? In a other day, we need to educate everybody on disability, because a lot of people think that the disability that you have something wrong with you. No, you just have a different disability. So we need to not only educate the government, but we also have to educate public schools too. We have to educate the whole city on this is what a intellectual disability is, this what they can do, this what they may be that they might need help. And how can we say that we are progressing, but we still have thousands of people on the waiting list? How can we so what I'm doing right here, I'm saying thank you for this first hearing, and I am charging you. I'm charging you to make all the cities officials recognize not the disability, but the brilliance and ability of people. Why should we be treated different just because of our disability? I saw this nation talk about every single right, fight hard, get TV programs, but when it's come to people with disability, somehow we get pushed back to the back burner. And I am asking y'all to be a pioneer in this movement. I just want to say, Charles Horton, thank you, my brother, for all that you had done. And I just want to say this about myself. If I have a disability, and I'm also an African American man we need to change our police officers on how to work with people with disabilities. And just to give you, I was teased when I was in public school, but that same old little black boy who some students, some teachers in public school did not think that he wanna be nothing, that same black boy is sitting here in front of you, testifying before you as a 4.0 sophomore at football. So, I'm going to read this article recognizing the humanity of all fellow beings. We pay ourselves the harvest tribute, and that was from the late great Durga Marshall. And in order for us to be a great city, to be a pioneer, we need to start recognizing what people with the disability can do and stop focusing on what they cannot do. Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, everyone.
I want to thank the panel for their testimony. Councilman Parker.
Thank you for your courtesy, Councilman Green. I greatly appreciate it. Let me start, Thomas Earl, by just saying thank you for acknowledging the start of the work with a city like Philadelphia that has limited revenue generating capacity without having to go to the Pennsylvania General Assembly that you mentioned in order to get authority. The increase, the small increase, I would say, in the realty transfer tax that was introduced by Council President Clark, that I introduced on his behalf, that will address that backlog that you mentioned, where adaptive mod is a part of it, was only just a start. I want to say thank you for just even acknowledging and paying attention to it. It no way, hits all of what we need to do or where we need to go, but it is the tip of the iceberg, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Let me say to you, Sean, I hope you don't live in the 9th Councilmatic District, because I think in a few more years, hopefully if he runs, he's going to run at large. And I hope he's running against you, Councilman Green, or you, Councilman Gill. I guess I just wanted to say thank you, and I thank Councilman Green for the courtesy. We have a meeting now on the other part of that $100 million that you referenced, which we're hoping is going to be a loan product, and that is where I'm going now. But Sean, I wanted you to know, you quoted Thurgood Marshall, who comes from my alma mater. You're with the SGA at Temple University. I don't know if anyone from Temple is here, but you just enhanced the Temple brand in ways that their marketing department never, ever, ever could. I know you all think I'm crazy, but for those of you who understand the cost of marketing, they could not have paid for the message that Sean just delivered here today. And I just needed to say that for the record. Each of you, your message is very much taken. The citizen approach that you described was a strategy that I never heard described that way before. So I thank you very much, and for your mentioning the challenges, the increase in AVI and the property taxes, but the challenges that both you and your mother had faced, because you humanized it when you connected with your families. And I just want to say thank you, Councilman Green. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. And I don't think it's just the people who were here at this hearing today. I think we've heard from all members of council that this is a priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Parker. Councilwoman Gibb?
Thank you very much, and thank you so much to this panel. I mean, one of the most important things and humbling things about the disabilities community has been that you've been always on the front lines of so many justice struggles. You've been on the front lines for public education with us. You've been on the front lines of housing, on economic justice issues, on criminal justice issues. Those have been incredibly powerful struggles. And now, at the moment when people deserve to not be treated as second-class citizens, when we look at the way that budgets and staffing is distributed across the city that reinforces marginalization and all of that, you know, you stood with us on all of these things, and I'll be standing with you, as will other members of City Council as well. So I think that, Mr. Holdsworth, I thought that I know that it's a citizenship approach that you kind of labeled. It's often been called an equity approach, and other cities, San Francisco, LA, are looking at different ways of looking at equity. But I was kind of curious about whether, in particular, the advisement around, you know, the ongoing kind of cross-training across all city departments, whether and how you've seen that be effective. We have a language access mandate. We should have the language access mandate across systems includes our courts, our DA's office, our city commissioners, row offices that have traditionally not directly subjected to city laws. But, you know, we're working hard to educate and bring into compliance those agencies so that they understand very clearly what the mission is, that they have a responsibility to serve people. And similarly, we want that mandate to apply for the disabilities community. It shouldn't obviously be just limited. But have you seen this work particularly well in other areas? And does it take like particular ordinances that need to make it go into effect? I mean, we have ADA, we have a fair ordinances law, we have, you know, multiple things that are at our disposal to use, but I don't know if you feel like there are additional legislative measures that we need to use to specifically hold departments accountable in order to kind of go in there and make sure that they're being appropriately trained or not.
I don't think you need an ordinance, but I think you probably need like a strategy that was worked out, and that, you know, through the Mayor's Commission could like be able to take a lead in that strategy. And then what you do, I think the first thing you'd probably do is the training needs analysis, which you probably know about, and then you would construct the training in a way that would be convenient for each department and would tailor to that department's needs and what you would feel that would the impact. So you'd have lots of discussion between each other, and then you bring disabled people in who have the expertise to lead the training and deliver it. I was doing that like for 20 years all over the world, and the basic component, you start off with this, what we call the social model. We'll talk about the compliance approach. We'd then look at language, and then we look at the actual work that department did, and we put like maybe through a case study or, you know, situational sort of stuff, and then we'd finally do an action plan, so that they would then take that away and do it. Now we did this in Birmingham, in England. We did this with the education department because that was run by the city, and we closed all special schools within 6 years. Because we trained them. In fact, the last training request we had was from the last special school, which was a residential school, and which was the only day it closed was Christmas Day, and they were saying, how can we be a better special school? I said, you can't, you're going, you know, it's over. So we actually trained them to sort of move out into broader education. So training can be very effective, and it can also help shape policy and also get departments focused on what the priorities are.
Yeah, and I think we have somewhat of a model with the language access mandate that we can look at, but I think it fundamentally takes an office to be able to manage all these different city departments and to look through what the numbers are and review all of them. So, you know, we'll certainly be supporting all of that. And then for Tom, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the parking authority. It's been, you and I have both been through enormously frustrating kinds of struggles with the PPA, and its refusal to kind of abide by, basic compliance, I think, and there's just a lot of questions for me about whether there is still the New York lawsuit that's out there about the fact that the taxi cabs that are currently in play, whether they meet the standards of federal guidelines, and whether a lawsuit is still possible and in play around this issue.
Very possibly. Litigation is always an alternative and hopefully one of last resort. But I think in Philadelphia, we are at a point in the sort of evolution of the ADA that I think most of the folks in this audience here would be willing to accept taxi vehicles that may not be fully compliant to the letter of the law, but are nevertheless usable by a passenger who uses a wheelchair or has another mobility impairment. We're so desperate, we'd take anything. And we just have a handful of them here in Philadelphia. I believe there are 41 medallions for wheelchair accessible vehicles that are up for auction with a minimum asking price of $10,000, and they're moving very slow. And I think that in part is because the business community, why would they want to spend even $10,000 when Uber and Lyft can operate wheelchair vehicles with no fee? So we really, and I know there's another panel that's going to be focusing on this with a good level of detail.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Sean and Mr. Krebs, thank you so much for your testimony. It was incredibly powerful and moving. Thank you.
Councilman Green, I just have one closing remark, and that is with the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities, it was wonderful to celebrate together the Mayor's Commission annual breakfast. And it was great, to see the scholarships that were given out to students with disabilities. But again, what was sad about that is a good amount of the money that funded those scholarships didn't even come from the city. It came from revenue from the Disability Pride Parade and the willingness of the disabled community that's here today to honor Chuck's requests to help with that worthy cause. The city should be putting a lot of money into that, and I think it's just one illustration of how little the city does from a general revenue perspective on a huge budget. And I think it would be very prudent for City Council in the coming budgetary session to consider at least the $2 million budget for the Mayor's Commission for People with Disabilities. Thank you.
What I would like to see council do is next year make progress for people with disability. As soon as y'all come back from session, start making this the city of brotherly love that accrue everyone, despite what they may have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the panel for your testimony. I want to thank you, Mr. Krebs, for your testimony. When you highlighted the fact that we have 2 people in this office, and Tom, I think you identified we have at least 200,000 people in the city of Philadelphia who self-identify with some type of difference. You're talking 1 person per 100,000, and that number is just startling. as well as Alan, thank you for your testimony and all the work you've done. And Sean, thank you for your testimony. You are someone who I've known for a little while. You've met my son. For many of you know that this issue is very personal for me. And I tend not to be a person that gets too emotional, but when I see someone like Sean and all he's accomplished, that's what I hope for my son who's living with autism. So thank you. Our next panel, we have Morgan Hugo, Dinah Hubert, German Brody, and Harry Barnum. It's odd to see Harry here on a Wednesday, so we see you every Thursday in council. I know, but we're so used to seeing you being here every Thursday, so they're glad to see you here in a testimony capacity. So thank you, Harry.
When Harry testifies, will she speak into the microphone?
Oh, you will.
Yeah, we have to tell her. Oh, she'll speak into the microphone.
Okay. Harry.
You talk a lot. We know. All right, I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Morgan Hugo, and I live in Schoolers District, Italian Market. And I want to thank you guys very much for hosting this hearing. I work at Liberty Resources. I'm a board member of Disabled in Action, and I'm also a member of ADAPT. I'm out at Liberty Resources. I'm the coordinator of the One Step campaign and an independent living specialist. And I also have ADHD, diagnosed with anxiety disorder in the past, also depression as well. I joke that the second longest relationship besides my partner is my therapist. First of all, I apologize that it took longer than expected to get here today with the Christmas Village. The City Hall is not very accessible to people with disabilities and who use wheelchairs. Don't know what you guys can do about that, but that would be great. Also this summer too, with the Disability Pride flag raising, we had to get a portable ramp, and there's only one accessible entrance to get inside City Hall, and even into the courtyard too. And that's a shame. So as the coordinator of the One Step campaign, I, along with my peers with physical disabilities, we go to businesses that can become easily accessible under the ADA and request that they do so. We give them the ADA Small Business Guide and a list of contractors that they can possibly use. We also tell them about the tax benefits that are available to small businesses so that they become easily accessible, and we file pro se complaints if necessary. Two things I've noticed about talking to small businesses about the need for accessibility. First of all, the first time that you speak to a business about accessibility, they become angry and defensive. A lot of times the reaction is, well, a person doesn't come into the business that uses a wheelchair in the first place. Well, first of all, why would a person who uses a wheelchair come into your business in the first place? And then also, even if you could deliver items outside to the person, who in their right mind wants to wait outside in the rain without even seeing the menu, not even being treated like a regular customer to make their purchase? I don't know about you, but I don't want to do that. And then also, business owners are really clueless on what to do. It seems from my perspective that they don't have the resources, and they oftentimes don't need that. They need to become accessible of the ADA, and they need to know this stuff. So some recommendations that I have to you guys and the city government. So first of all, you need to make L&I more stringent on enforcing the ADA, especially when there's change of use in zoning code laws, or if a business becomes completely rehabbed. And yeah, it's very important that a business has an accessible bathroom or lower counters, but many times people just want to get into that darn front door to get the services that they need, and that can become done by the ramp. Also, have the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities provide the insight and technical assistance to small businesses that want to become accessible under the ADA. Currently, when you go to the website and you click on the link Ramp Your Business, you're directed to L&I's website. I did a quick search on L&I's website about accessibility. I couldn't find anything. And then from my standpoint, L&I in the adversarial role, you need to make the Mayor's Commission on Disability want to work with the small businesses. And if the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities wants a good tool, they can model Pittsburgh Commission on Disabilities one-step program, which has forms and resources that streamlines the process for businesses that want to remove their one step so patrons can enter the business. The City of Philadelphia and the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities can also offer small business grants and loans and recognize that businesses publicly that do become accessible under the ADA. I believe it's New York City that has a wall cling that you can hang on your wall if you do become accessible, so people are able to identify that. I might have that city wrong, but there is a wall cling that one of the cities has. Also, you can work with CDC's bids and RCOs in educating businesses owners and community members on the importance of accessibility and give them the tools to do so. We know that city planning starts on the local side here. An example of this is the Old City District that publishes resources in their business-to-business newsletter. And I know that CDC bids, RCOs can do a lot more than this right here. And include people with disabilities in the planning and implementation process in determining what businesses are not accessible. This includes public parks, rec centers, and community organizations. An example of this that I learned from one of my friends who has a visual disability is that the fountains in front of City Hall are really great and beautiful for a person who doesn't have a visual disability, but if you're trying to navigate them with a cane, trying to get inside City Hall in the courtyard, it's very difficult because there aren't the ridges to mark where you can go without getting wet. So listen to the input of the disabled community on what needs to be done and why. As the saying goes, nothing about us without us. And finally, and most importantly, the Mayor's Commission has to appoint a designated worker whose sole job it is to perform these tasks and work with community. We know for a fact that L&I is overworked, overtaxed. Look what happened at 20th and Market a couple years ago with a building collapse. So we need to strengthen L&I, and we need to strengthen the Mayor's Commission on Disability to improve ADA accessibility. We need to make Philadelphia accessible to all, and not just accessible to us able-bodied folks. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks very much for this opportunity. My name is Dinah Aubert. I'm an attorney with an organization called Disability Rights Pennsylvania, or as I may refer to it, DRP. We are the statewide nonprofit organization that's designated as the protection advocacy system for Pennsylvanians with disabilities. And as such, we are very concerned with ADA compliance in Philadelphia. And Morgan hit a lot of what I want to say to you. So that just goes to show that this is a very widespread issue. As has been alluded to, a great many of Philadelphia's places of public accommodation, and that's places that are open to the public, and that can be retail stores, service establishments, things like that. A great many of those aren't accessible to people with mobility disabilities. As an example, in 2014, there was a survey done of part of North 3rd Street from Chestnut to Race, and it showed that of the 72 storefronts on these 4 blocks, only 9 out of 72 were wheelchair accessible. Quite often, these barriers can be removed relatively easily, and that is something that the ADA requires. However, there currently is very little effort by the city to ensure that this happens. So in case anyone is not familiar, the way the ADA is written, it really relies on private citizens with disabilities bringing lawsuits to enforce it. So that means that it is up to Philadelphia citizens alone to fight for civil rights under the ADA. And sometimes individuals may bring pro se lawsuits, like Morgan talked about, where they represent themselves in federal court. And sometimes they're represented by myself and other attorneys with the DRP. This requires an enormous expenditure of resources, especially when compared to the increase in accessibility that comes from those efforts. And while every business that gets a ramp is important, we are expending many resources for not a lot of benefit, and that's really unfortunate. Unfortunately, instead of City Hall addressing these issues systematically, we rely on individuals to fight it one storefront at a time. A couple speakers have talked about the need for the city's L&I department to have more responsibility to certify ADA compliance, and I will echo that is crucial. In addition to that, though, we need city education efforts around what ADA compliance for an establishment means. And we also need a process that people can take advantage of if they are aware of an ADA violation, where they can report it to a single person in the city, and that person can then coordinate efforts by other departments as needed to correct that. So that is a model that has been implemented in several other large cities, and it could address the problems with much greater efficiency than we currently have. So I'll stop there, and I'll just say that Philadelphia has the potential to become a destination for disabled travelers, and moreover to ensure that the 130,000 Philadelphians with mobility disabilities are really integrated and welcome into daily life in our city. But this can't happen unless the city devotes more resources to fighting for the rights of people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Hugo.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for having this hearing. My name is Herman Perotti. I am the president of Disabled in Action of Pennsylvania, so far called DIA. DIA is a grassroots organization run by people with disabilities, established over 40 years ago, that advocates for the rights of people with disabilities in Philadelphia and throughout the Commonwealth. I am here today to testify on Resolution 160932 regarding services for the disabled community and general compliance and enforcement for Americans with Disabilities Act. I'd like to begin by making a correction to the resolution language as it quotes the U.S. Census on the disabled population of the city, stating 190,000 people live with disabilities in the city. The City of Philadelphia, along with the Philadelphia Housing Authority, released the assessment of fair housing on October 27, 2016, which finds 238,433 people living with disabilities reside in our city, making nearly 16.8% of the population. In Chicago, as of the 2010 Census on Disability and Status Report, there are 292,000 people living in Chicago with disabilities, making 10.9% of their population. In 2010, I'm sure it's risen doubtfully to 16.8 as it is today in Philadelphia. And as we heard earlier, they staff 20-something people. In large, this is a population that live on fixed incomes and receive some sort of housing assistance. already being marginalized from society and oftentimes against our will, we are imprisoned in nursing institutions such as the city-owned the Philadelphia Nursing Home, which the city keeps using as dumping grounds of 150 beds that must always be filled. We must strive to build a Philadelphia that welcomes all its citizens. Over 7 years ago, that property, which is the 2100 block of Girard Avenue, costed over $10 million on Craigslist. 450 people are always there, and on an annual basis, Liberty Resources at least takes out 50 people from there only, at least. And the city continues dumping people there. The passage of the ADA happened 26 years ago. And still today, we find many places, as Morgan mentioned, with one steps, such as a lot you will find in Chinatown, West Philly, and in the up-and-coming neighborhood of the Gayborhood. Another issue is the proper signage during construction, such as the night of October 13th, earlier this year, when the sidewalks of the southeastern side of 2nd and Walnut Streets were being redone, completely blocked. On this evening, Liberty Resources Center for Independence in Philadelphia had its annual fundraiser, and many of the people that had mobility challenges, 130,000 live in this city, you said, Dinah, had to go into the street on the Thursday evening on 2nd and Walnut. I would say around 30 people had to do this, including myself, towards the Sheraton, which is right almost a block. With the high-raised, what do you call it, the cobblestone, and nowhere initially in the sidewalk was there any signage that it was blocked. This happened on the night of October 13th. As it is today, the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities only staffs one person and 1.5 time, as you've heard. They assist and refer people with disabilities to relevant services, and also have the responsibility of the city's Accessibility Compliance Office. They are the ADA coordinator for the city, and they happen to also be the handicapped and disability advocate. Not only are these too many responsibilities for such an understaffed office, serving such a large population, again, over 230,000 people, plus the thousands of tourists we have coming to the city for the flower show, the car show. Last year we had the Veterans Sports game, and at that point we had, you'll hear later the statistics on the taxis, but we didn't have at that point more than 50 accessible cabs. That's preposterous. And so the person that takes in the complaints is also the person that justifies the compliances for the city. That is surely a conflict of interest. This is done by the same person, same title, Charles Holton. I do not know if it's a conflict of interest for the job to be done under the same office, but surely not with the same person. Furthermore, with all these duties, with such an under-budgeted staff, we must end up by being underserved our community. Another simple example of how we underserved, Morgan mentioned how the website is bad. I have the website link in my testimony. Not only is it outdated, if you take a look, it really is, but some of the links are wrong. The airport link takes you to a page that is no longer in service, and the resource section for the sign language policy document provides a phone number that no longer is in service for real-time captioning service, Voice Print Inc. And this document was created on the March 16, 2001, and it doesn't seem to have been updated since. And another thing that Councilwoman Jim, you mentioned that what could other places do, or what do they do to assist with this? Boston, which we mentioned has around 10, 15 something staff, they have been doing over the last 2 years not only on the administration, but community training on different disabilities and how to approach us. Some people call it sensitivity training. Some of us don't like that approach, but educating the administration, council people, and the public, I mean, the small sector, private sector, on how to work with people with different disabilities. That is something that office right now is doing, and I could look into information because I know people personally working on this right now for this. Not only would this help with private sector and the administration and council, but also with the police administration. Not to say that Philadelphia has an outrageous account of harassing us in comparison to the rest of the country in average, but nonetheless in nationwide, about roughly 50% of the people that police abuse are people that either went in with mental illness or as a result of the abuse will have mental illness thereafter. It is evident that MCPD, the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities, is largely underserved, which is why it cannot ensure that even our City Hall adheres to its own policies. Morgan mentioned earlier how the north entrance remains inaccessible, but it just had recently reconstruction done, not in the last 2 years, and it remained inaccessible. And we had our Disability Pride event there, and we had to bring a ramp around. But the city is not adhering to its own policies. When something's being redone, 2 steps should be made accessible. It was done, and it wasn't accessible. We expected it would be. When about 3 years ago, we used to meet with Rhina Cutler, and at least in reference to winter-related snow fines, violations, she said that in large, the city was the larger violator. If the city, if the ILNL understood how to best work with over 230,000 people in the city, we would have a better outcome with all this. Nonetheless, we are heading in the right direction. Earlier this year, you passed an ordinance claiming a week in June as Disability Pride Week. It is one of the slogans of that is disabled and proud. I mean, I wasn't born with a disability. I acquired at 17, and over the rest of my half life now, I'm 32 years now, I am proud of being disabled. I believe our community is proud of owning that today. And I want to thank you for holding this hearing. As you can see, one bill is being presented, and thank you for joining us, Councilwoman Blackwell. You can see that yesterday we had another hearing around 4 bills. You had the room this filled. Today's one on one issue, same amount, you can see. And I hope that this committee will allow all testimonies to be heard before, I believe at the end of the hearing, you will meet in public to discuss the results. And unlike other committees, I hope this committee takes into account all testimonies before you make a decision. You have given the disabled community of Philadelphia today a voice, and we urge you to closely and dearly take our testimonies in heart. We need a better funded Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities, like Councilwoman Bass earlier said, how Thomas Earl earlier said, he mentioned $2 million. That would be amazing in comparison to what we have today. But we need something in the next year's budget, an increase. I mean, it's preposterous, and we're just starting. And if you could allocate some of the soda tax revenues just passed to the disgusting Philadelphia nursing home, that the moment you go in, the stench of urine hits your face, you can find monies next year to better fund the office that holds the civil rights of people with disabilities true. Thank you for your time, and please remember, we hold in dear and heart and strong that nothing about us without us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnum.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I want to welcome all the council members that are here with us today.
The mic's not on. Is it on? You gotta talk into the mic.
I'm a Deaf Advocate Coordinator, and I'm here to talk about communication access and accessibility for the deaf community. All over the city of Philadelphia, there are thousands of people who have a disability, but there's also so many people in the disability community in Philadelphia, and many of those, there's 400,000 deaf people in Philadelphia. PSA announcements, etc., that happen in the city of Philadelphia, emergency announcements, interpreters don't seem to be provided, and the deaf community isn't privy to what goes on, whether it's an emergency in the city of Philadelphia, something weather-related, any type of something going on within City Hall. In various agencies through city government, like the tree lighting, for example, different celebrations, it's never announced that interpreter will be there, or the interpreter is often not provided. And I urge you to start publicizing that an interpreter will be provided, because the deaf community is very saddened. You know, we'd like to go to different presentations, we get there and there's no interpreter, so we either sit there and sit through it, you know, frustrated, or we leave. But City Hall is responsible to make sure that you get the deaf community involved. And we're willing to help, and we've been giving you ideas, and they don't seem to be followed through on. There is a video that can be on the website regarding different announcements, like for the tree lighting, for example, that wasn't well publicized and didn't mention anything about an interpreter being present. You can use this icon as I'm showing you right now. It's the symbol that we use for interpreter, and you can post that on your website at different festivities or different town halls or hearings like today, to show the deaf community that an interpreter will be present and be provided. You know, so that's really, you know, yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a meeting here regarding the House and the budget for $460 million that was provided, and deaf people did show up and there was no interpreter provided, and there was no communication accessibility for us. So we sat there kind of clueless, and that's one thing that the deaf community needs to be informed about. And it's like we were ignored and shunned. We weren't provided access to that event yesterday here at City Hall. So that's just one example I'm talking about regarding providing interpreting services. I'd also like for the symbol of the interpreter to be on your website. So I just wanted to say that one more time. One other thing that's really important, deaf people have the right to ASL interpreters, American Sign Language interpreters, whether they go to the dentist, the doctor, to see their social worker, any state agency. And an example of that would be if a deaf person goes to the hospital, they provide VRI, which is Video Remote Interpreting Services. And it's an interpreter on a video screen. So they reel this computer over and they set it up, and often the staff doesn't know how to work it. You know, also it depends on if the machine itself actually works. Sometimes the person's from another country or a different part of the country, and we do have regional signs. Not all sign language is the same, and every area and cities have different signing. It's like having a different accent, for lack of a better term. So there's different varieties of sign language, and it's really important that the city doesn't allow hospitals to depend on VRI. You need to make them responsible providing a live, real person interpreter to arrive to these situations, whether it's a hospital or a lawyer's office. They can't depend on this technology. It's better to have an in-person live interpreter. That is a very huge concern within the deaf community right now, and it's our right to have an interpreter present in these various situations that we face every day. I also noticed that Spanish interpreters, whether it's social worker, hospitals, etc., the Spanish interpreters are always right there. They're on staff and they are there. Deaf people come in and all it is frustration, and then our appointments and our needs and our meetings get postponed until the accommodation can be met. But Spanish people can walk in any place and they have the priority of the Spanish interpreter being there ready for them no matter what. But you know what? I understand Spanish is their first language, but American Sign Language is my first language, so where's the respect for me? We deserve the same respect as Spanish people deserve for our first language being American Sign Language. The next thing I would like to mention, again, has to do with deaf people's rights and not being discriminated due to the ADA and reasonable accommodations. Often deaf people aren't given the accommodations to be able to be hired into various positions, whether it's state agencies or other businesses, private or in the public sector. Every agency needs to know that you can't discriminate to a deaf person and not hire them because they're deaf. There needs to be a specific process that deaf people can file regarding something with the Human Relations Commission, for example, or the Phillies Commission on Human Rights. I believe those are the two. PCHRC is something in Philadelphia, and the Disability Rights Network of Pennsylvania. They've also been involved with us. But deaf people need to know that they're available. And also these three agencies need to make clear what is right and what is not discrimination and what is discrimination, so deaf people and the people on the hiring side, etc., know what they can do and the best way to provide communication services or whatever the deaf person needs, whether they go to the doctor, etc. But PHRC is crucial, and also is the Department of Justice, the DOJ. They need to clarify the definition of discrimination so everyone's clear on that. So I'm asking you all this today. You know, deaf people should not be discriminated against. We need access to communication and open access. You know, we're not about filing, complaints all the time. If interpreting services are provided for us and we have equal access to participate, those complaints and things would never happen. And the government needs to start with the communication. That's where it needs to start. Whether it's property tax hikes or different laws and ordinances being changed or passed or hearings regarding these things. They need to have access for us to be able to participate, because so many of the departments in city government ignore us. And the reason I say they ignore us is because there's no communication. So that means we're being ignored. I remember the last time, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I was at a meeting here at City Council, and Councilwoman Blackwell, you were here and you were speaking, and the deaf people didn't have any interpreter. And we were very disruptive, and the meeting was canceled and postponed to another day when an interpreter would be provided. And that was awesome, because the most important paramount thing in that day was communication services, whether it's welfare, government, court, being in the hospital, whether it's city council, whatever it may be, communication access is crucial. And Councilwoman Blackwell, you did a great thing for us that day. So I urge you, there's 4,000 deaf people in the city of Philadelphia. Many of you have helped, many of you have come in contact with some of them. But, what did I want to say? Mayor's Commission on Disability provides support and services for you. So you need to open up that to the communication so that everyone can be on the same page. And the Mayor's Commission can't do everything by themselves. Poor Charles, oh my God, he has a mountain on his shoulders. There's nothing more that we can ask that man to do. And it's really interesting, the camaraderie and the the work and the focus that the deaf community helps with each other, but nobody else is, everybody's involved, and often the deaf community can't participate in that camaraderie because we don't quote-unquote have a voice and the interpreters aren't provided for us. And that's the way that it's been. So it's time to break that and make everything be accessible to us so that we can participate and help to build a better and brighter future for all. You know, my dream and my goal for the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities is for City Hall and all government to have less problems and have a seamless involvement and equity within it. So I thank you again for allowing me to express my feelings today. And if communication needs can't be met and frustrations happen, you know, we can say thank you for LRI for helping to advocate to open those doors, but we need your help as well, because everybody needs to wake up and smell the coffee and realize that, you know, whether it's a video announcement on city halls, whether it's there's going to be a fire coming, or there's going to be a snowstorm coming, or there was a fire, it's really important that that's accessible so that deaf people can follow what's going on in the news, you know, and also having interpreting services provided. So, you know, it's also when there is an interpreter provided often with emergency services like the snow or when there's a big storm coming, but the newscasters and the news cameras don't keep the interpreter in the screenshot. They keep the mayor in the screenshot. And the interpreter's often standing right next to the mayor and they cut him or her out of it. It's crucial that you make a mandate to the news agencies and news channels that you keep the interpreter in the screen, because why else do you have the interpreter there? If you cut them out of the screen, you can't see them. So deaf people live here. Look, we have all these deaf people over here on this side, and they need open communication access. Don't put more barriers up in the world for us. You know, we're tired of being ignored by hearing people. You know, we want to know what's wrong. Why can't we have access? We don't want to be looked down upon. There's the biggest frustration with us is communication. And once that communication barrier is broken, you know, I don't care if deaf people can speak or they're oral, they have a cochlear implant, it doesn't matter. We need accessibility and equity for all. So that's really what I wanted to say. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm really happy to be with you here today listening to me.
I want to thank the panel for your testimony. Also acknowledge member of this committee, Councilwoman Blackwell, for being here as well. Councilwoman Gimm has some questions.
Just a few quick ones. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, thank you so much to this amazing panel for all the issues that you brought to light. There are a couple of things that, you know, we're moving on a little bit, and we're certainly keeping in mind a whole host of the issues that you brought up. But a couple of things are moving and in play right now. So, Mr. Purdy, first of all, thank you for years of alliances, struggles, civil rights, protest. Yeah, it means a lot. So very quickly, though, this issue of street blockages has been a very serious issue for our office, for a number of different communities. I'm sure it seriously impacts, it impacts people who are easily mobile and others who are not. But if our office is working on reviewing and upgrading the existing bills, we're trying to ensure that there seems to be just tremendous leeway in terms of being able to block streets without providing pedestrian access. But I wanted to be clear and maybe work with you or whomever you want to designate or the Mayor's Commission that if we strengthen the requirement around pedestrian walkways, that this is actually, is that the right terminology that we need to use to guarantee that disability, the disability community can actually make its way through. I'm actually not clear about whether the access points when they block streets, but they do provide the pedestrian walkways, especially when it's on street and there's like a physical barrier, whether they meet requirements for wheelchairs and other types of vehicle, mobility aids, thank you, that would do it. And if we need to think about mandating a certain amount of space, and what experiences you've had. So I'm curious about that.
Again, I mean, initially, I believe DRP has looked into this matter somewhat in the past, the Disability Rights Pennsylvania. In essence, it's as long as they have a 36 inches, and depending on the slope. But it's, for example, right, you have it right here on Market on between 13th and 12th and 13th, right? And to an extent, it's doable. But when you have issues, you've had it on Broad Street during the DNC, and I've worked with Streets Department, they're planning to raise Broad Street, but you have up to some areas with 2 feet between the street and the sidewalk, and very slopey that easily. I sometimes have to avoid some because I know I would fall backwards. Like I know Chestnut and Broad, I don't try it on the west side because I would fall backwards.
And is DRP actively working on this issue in terms of it's like these temporary structures that go up when we block the streets?
Right.
Or sidewalks, rather.
So we don't have active work going on around that right now.
Could you advise if there's like some stuff that's moving?
Yeah.
It's definitely an issue that I'd be interested in looking at. I believe, were you referring to permanent curb cuts that exist, like when you talk about Chestnut and Broad?
I mean, that's a whole issue.
Right, that's a whole
But I mean, no,
issue.
in the years past, I've worked with Rocco, who's another attorney there, on this particular matter. So I will be very happy and willing to help you with
That'd be
this,
great.
and I will bring in
Thank you.
experts on the field.
Thank you. And then, thank you very much. And Mr. Barnum, so ASL is a recognized language, isn't that correct?
Yes, you're correct.
And that
Yes,
means...
and people grow up signing. It's been around for a really long time.
Sure.
And without it, there would be no communication.
And...
And, go ahead, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we have a language access mandate in place for all city agencies, row offices. We're working with it's traditionally been seen as non-English speakers as a spoken language, but I think it would be important to ensure that ASL is incorporated as a specific access at the language access mandate. Is that fair?
How can you do that? Do you just send a reminder out, for lack of a better term, or
No.
how exactly would you urge people to do that?
And we can talk about this, but I think one of the more important aspects is that we actually have a very specific committee working right now to work within city agencies, city governments. We're reviewing city council practices. I mean, I think that, I'll speak as a recently new member, but we are not living up to our language access mandate in any way, shape, or form for any languages that are being spoken. I mean, it is a major, major issue. We had a hearing recently involving a number of immigrant communities who were upset about violence that was happening with them, and many of them spoke a number of different Asian languages, and we had no language access, so people couldn't testify, they couldn't understand what's happening. So this is a huge problem for us, and I think that there's a number of us who are aware of it. We have an internal committee that's kind of looking at what we need to be doing and providing, whether there are contracts that we need to be working on. But I just want to make sure that we work with Mr. Horton and also yourself and other members of the deaf community to ensure that we're not just looking at spoken languages, that we're looking and incorporating ASL as a fundamental part of the language access mandate.
Yes, and also, it's a variety of languages. Everybody needs to have access. And again, frustration is the number one thing that the deaf community feels. Everybody's talking around them, and Spanish people, they have a lot of Spanish people around them, and, people who speak English in the Spanish community, but then deaf people's English isn't, up to par with a lot of hearing people, so you can't always resort on writing.
Yeah.
So we really need to think, and this is history, and it's been a long struggle, and it's always been a struggle, and it's about time that the struggle, we're done struggling. It just needs to end. Right, deaf community over there helping me? You got it. So you're right, but we really need to think about the deaf people. Communication is paramount.
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that we have a smooth solution, because if not, the situation is just going to exasperate and get worse.
I just
and
feel
we
like-
don't want any kind of like rebel, and the deaf community to rebel in any way, shape, or form.
Sure
So
you
we
do.
want to, give everybody the access that they deserve.
I just want to make sure that, so we have a lot of internal dialogue going on within City Council and within the Office of Immigrant Affairs, and what I want to make clear is that the deaf community has to be involved with ASL and the holding of city agencies and others accountable to the language access mandate that we're trying to push forward. And so if you do not feel like that is currently happening, we have to change that immediately, because those are among the couple of things that are currently in play right now, and it's opening up some opportunities for us to engage with other city agencies, with City Council itself, to talk about how to better do this. But I appreciated everybody's entire testimony, but especially the reminder that ASL is part of the language access mandate, and we have to be incorporating our deaf community in dialogue about it with our other agencies. So thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this panel. Let's call up the next panel. Matt Clark, Mark Longo, Latoya Maddox, and Daniel Curacao.
Mark's place. All right, great. Phew. All right. How's everyone doing today?
Thank you.
Nice. Thanks for having us here, Council. I know we have just about 40 minutes to go. I know there are a lot more people that want to speak, so I'm going to try to keep this quick. But I think kind of like the overwhelming input. What's that?
You guys put your name on the...
Oh, yeah, sorry, that part. My name is Matt Clark. I'm a Philadelphia citizen here. I'm a member of the Fair Ride Philly Coalition, Taxis for All Philadelphia, ADAPT, Disabled in Action, and I also serve on the Mayor's Commission of People with Disabilities Transportation Committee. But I'm here speaking as myself right now, not representing the NCPD. Chuck's done a good job of that. So first, I'm just going to set a clock here so I keep myself moving. So this panel, we're going to be talking about communication. About transportation. And I think one thing right off the bat that when I saw the announcement for this hearing, I see the term special needs, which I think is, I know that's part of the community. I think one danger of the term special needs, it often makes people think of, these are like added needs or like extra nice needs, when in fact, I don't think there's anything special about needing to get around the city. There's nothing special about being able to communicate at city functions, and there's nothing special about needing housing, These aren't special needs, these are basic needs that aren't being met. And so when you think about what's the purpose of the MCPD, this doesn't exist to, provide extra services for these people who have these extra needs. It's created to correct a wrong that's excluded people in the first place. Like Harry just said, this is history. Correcting, going out there and building ramps. This isn't about, an extra nice thing for a business. This is about correcting a civil rights violation. So I just hope, that's one thing to think about. We're not doing extras, we're just fighting for the bare minimum here. Now, when it comes to transportation, I just want to quickly paint a little bit of the need here, what's the current situation, and what happens when you have, a budget of $14,000 to address this issue. So, folks with disabilities in the Philadelphia have a lot less options to get around than folks without disabilities do. You know, as Armand said, there are 238,000 people with disabilities, period, in Philadelphia. According to a city council resolution, at least 128,856 of those have ambulatory disabilities. So, now, that means that, you know, take SEPTA, for instance, with their fixed route transportation. How do you get around? Well, I'm happy to say that all 121 of the 121 bus routes are fully accessible, which is great. However, 19 of our subway stations aren't accessible. So that means that, you know, Latoya and I can only access 64%. 90 of the 154 regional railroad stations are inaccessible. That means that, you know, folks with mobility disabilities can only access 58% of the regional rail system. 18 of the 22 Norristown high-speed line stations are inaccessible. That means folks with mobility disabilities can only access 18% of that. Sorry, my math's backwards here. And then when it comes to the trolley lines, only 1 out of our 8 trolley lines are accessible, which is not very much left. So all told now, people say, well, that's what, you know, paratransit's for. That's what CCT is for. Well, thank you, Spitfire, yes. First of all, you know, as Sean was quoting Thurgood Marshall earlier, you know, separate but equal is inherently unequal. So having these separate, segregated services themselves aren't the solution we need to build towards. Now, for paratransit, I think there's a lot of perceptions like, well, there's these gaps in SEPTA fixed route, but paratransit fills those gaps. But the reality is, the overwhelming majority of people with disabilities don't qualify for paratransit. I'm not disabled enough for paratransit. Of the 480,000 people in Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia counties, 480,000 people that have mobility disabilities, there are only 14,124 paratransit riders. Paratransit only serves less than 3% of people with mobility disabilities in Philadelphia. So what does that mean? So I think what happens then is when you had the SEPTA strike recently was a great example of what happens if when that's taken away from us. During the SEPTA strike, there were 41 accessible vehicles left on the streets of Philadelphia. That's 30, not including paratransit, that's 37 Uber vehicles, 37 wheelchair accessible taxis, and 4 wheelchair accessible Ubers. Now, so that means, there's one Uber Wave for every 32,214 people with disabilities in Philadelphia. By contrast, there is one Uber Lyft vehicle for every 99 non-disabled citizens of Philadelphia. That's a huge disparity, And so, by working to address this barrier, that's a huge, like I said, 1 to 38,000 versus 1 to 99,000. Those aren't very good odds. So this past year, folks with the disability community have teamed together with taxi cab drivers and Uber drivers to create a better, more equitable system for everybody. There is Pennsylvania law. Harrisburg is going to take this up. And we came to the mayor to talk about having him call together the Philadelphia delegation to address this issue in Harrisburg. Von Ross said he would create a working group to address this issue. However, this got punted, if you will, to Charles, who's, like you said, the hardest working man in Philadelphia. He is the executive director of the MCPD, he's the accessibility compliance specialist, and he's the ADA coordinator. Mr. Councilman Green, he said he's, the James Brown of Philadelphia. James Brown got paid a lot more than Charles Horton does. And I think the Philadelphians with disabilities were worth more than 6 cents each. And that's how much the city is paying into the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. So when we came to, Charles and said, hey, listen, we need to pull together the delegation, we need to bring stakeholders to the table, we need to work with Uber and Lyft before this bill passes in Harrisburg, he wasn't able to do it because he was so busy planning the brunch. And I know, when you're one person, planning an event like that takes an awful lot of work. But the idea that, he couldn't get back to us until after Harrisburg had already voted on this issue. And that's a horrible loss of opportunity. And, he just needs more than $14,000. You get what you pay for. And Philadelphians with disabilities, we're not getting what we're paying for. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to LaToya.
Good afternoon. My name is LaToya Maddox, and I'm going to give y'all the reality of this transportation issue. Not only do I work for Liberty Resources, I'm a DAP member, I'm a DIA member, I am a college student, a mother, and I just need to be certain places at certain times, and you can't get there just with CCT because they need at least 3 days to 24 hours in advance to make the ride. Whereas with if we had enough accessible taxi cabs in the city, I could just call one up to say I need you to come to this destination and take me to this destination to get to where I need to be. It would be much easier. Not only my son's not disabled, but he does have asthma, and there has been times in the past where he has gone in an ambulance with his father. Luckily, his father was there to go to the hospital, where I cannot get into the ambulance because the ambulance cannot transport me with my wheelchair, so I had to stay home and wait for the phone calls back and forth. So it's just it's basically ridiculous how you have one person doing the Charles Horton doing all this work, and how I'm not just speaking for myself, we all have lives, and CCTs can keep you on the van for 2 hours, up to 2 hours, and can be late 2 hours late and leave you 5 minutes after they arrive if you're not ready at the door to go out. And I've had an issue 2 weeks ago where they said they couldn't find me a driver to take me to school at night. I take night classes at Westchester University at Philadelphia campus, and they said they couldn't find me a driver, so I took the initiative to just go ahead and get on the bus to go to school, which I made it there in enough time. But there needs to be a way to have on-demand transportation when it need to be, when I need it, or when others with disabilities need it as well, because it's not just me, it's the whole disability community that is suffering with this transportation issue. And yes, SEPTA does run all night, but not all routes run all night. And that's all I have.
We'll have our next 2 panelists.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah. I have a speech impairment that decreases my projective communication speed, which is to be noted. Today I want to address City Council to explaining why I think there should be more funding for the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. Disability is as diverse as its impairments. What one is faced with can be unlike any other, even within the same category of one specific disability. One disability we do not talk about often is invisible disabilities. That is what I face every day. Imagine walking around the city of Philadelphia knowing that you have impairments when others won't even extend a hand. They can't offer a hand because you don't look like you need help.
Excuse me, sir. Can you just put your name on for the record for the stenographer?
Jeremiah Hart.
Okay.
Imagine walking around the city with decreased executive functioning from a near drowning accident at the age of 5, struggling throughout life when no one even sees you. And what's worse, when you can't even call out for help because your brain stops under stress. And what's even worse than that, when you are told by a bus driver, "What's wrong with you? Can't you speak?" and you just freeze. The suffer on the inside don't stop because the lack of awareness of others on the outside grows by the second. I place culpability on the city of Philadelphia for the neglect to aid the population I speak about and I stand up for today. We need to help the Mayor's Commission on people with disabilities to develop codified mandatory awareness training for all of its city's employees to be able to immediately recognize invisible disabilities. This commission must place all corporations accountable in this city that for their employees to gain that same awareness. There are all sorts of trainings offered to employees. Why not help them? Why not help those who are more at risk to be able to recognize what we are unable to do on our own? We need a one-stop shop where we can go when in need to help us navigate the system, because inclusion and integration is necessary and not an option for those living with the battle I and my brothers and sisters face every day. I don't ask for pity, I ask for understanding. When the commission has been expanded and adequately funded, the possibility of impossibilities begin. Today, I spearhead Sci-Fi Connections at Liberty Resources, am on the board of directors for Liberty Community Connections, and am developing the Consumer Advisory Committee. We may be invisible, but we will fight to be seen.
Thank you. Our next witness.
My name is Daniel Curcio. I address City Council today to explain why I think there should be more funding for the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. I'm a disabled veteran of the United States Marine Corps, having served during Desert Storm. Coming out, there were high hopes that everything would be fine until I found out how faulty the system was, along with the lack of sufficient and necessary services for us. There's everything from loopholes in the GI Bill that prevented funding for the education, for the education I could have benefited from, and not even sustainable benefits from the VA. I fully understand that this city of brotherly love is not responsible for federal funding. I do believe that the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities would benefit from having more employees to help with addressing issues that face our disabled veterans today. Issues. Let's talk about services we would benefit from expanding this commission and where those services would be rendered. How is it that I live in a city where a large portion of homeless veterans are on wheelchairs and nothing is being done? Why is it that our disabled veterans don't have access to an easily navigable and accessible city? The issues don't stop. Why should there be the inevitable outcome of veterans being placed in nursing homes? Why should our final destination be homelessness? Why should we be pointed to a GI Bill that doesn't cover nursing home transitioning? Why should it be harder for us to get out of a nursing home? And why should a bill not cover education that we deserve? Then we could talk about the rents in the city. My absentee landlord profits from a negative tax and operates under multiple names to gain even more tax benefits. Lives in a gated community in Huntington Beach, California, complains that she can't afford to keep my rent the same. She makes it almost impossible for me to stay in an area I enjoy and need for both me and the person I assist. I guess Philly allows for that kind of thing. Disabled veterans won't be pointed to a website for answers because to us, that is public neglect. For more money to go into hands that don't need it. I suggest that the Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities be the point of contact for these veterans who cannot waste time with a faulty Veterans Administration. So we add more valuable help and knowledgeable employees to the commission I speak of without taking away from Charles Horton. What is laughable? I've never heard of a commission with one person for an entire metropolis. This way, the commission serves as well-deserved guidance and instruction for my brothers and sisters. No, not a website do I speak of, but a real person that can bring us one step closer to nonprofits, for-profits, volunteer-run and driven agencies, and organizations where we could find adequate help. We request a phone number, not a URL, and a help desk, not an app, that would be both sufficient and necessary in aiding us in getting from one place to another. I ask you to stop supporting greedy landlords and neglect and an inaccessible city over disabled veterans and enhance the commission they would benefit from most.
I want to thank you all for your testimony. We're going to bring up the next panel. Eileen Spitfire Sable, Lisa Aquila, Jimmy Schroed, and Orlando Acosta. One other thing I would like to say that in putting together this hearing, there are a lot of other issues that we want to address. One of those issues is the Philadelphia nursing home. It's something that I've been aware of since my days in working for Councilman Tasco. We're looking at ways to address that. More likely than not, we would have a separate hearing on just that issue. Because that's an issue that has been going on for a number of years. I know I've talked to various people and advocates, especially people from Liberty Resources like Nancy Salandra and others. So we'll start with Ms. Sable.
Special needs, way black was born in this grave. You got I'm doing a thing on, my name is Eileen Adele Spitfire Sable. I'm a member of Liberty Adopt DIA. I'm doing a thing on hate crimes against the disabled, especially regarding step-down. Our civil rights are stagnated since the implementation of the ADA. I still have some black masses or trolleys a lot because they stepped on things. It's pre-1990. This event is typical. I was trying to board a trolley on December 24th last year, 5 o'clock in the evening. As usual, I suffered a lot of retaliation for being uppity. You can't get rides because you don't know your place. Why can't you use power transit like your kind should? Oh, does that sound familiar? The last driver, and I was denied a ride 6 times, actually said, I don't take retards. That did it. I blocked the trolley. He yelled that he would call the cops, and I replied, make my day. I lost the missed charges. Instead, he becked to 6 huge thugs from the other nation who beat me up really badly and moved me off the track on my chair. I'm glad it wasn't broken. Nobody helped. They deported as always, and I called SEPTA, but the receptionist called me a wino retard and hung up. Nothing was ever done. Most loudly ridiculed in public because of my speech impairment, or just flatly told scam before the cops come. Have a PC, a computer? Now Philadelphia has a very hostile environment, and nobody takes it seriously when violence occurs. We must really enforce the laws and hold SEPTA accountable when they assault us. Give the hate crimes bill more teeth. Are we even men? I don't know. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Big kids treated like this will not be swept under the rug anymore. This is 2016, not 1950. What's left on the wet pavement? You can't go to school and you're one of us. Thank you, and I hope this time we get action, not lip service. I believe it when I see it. It's written this slowly also. Peace. Hello. And you have to save yourself. Fifth one needs. Way black and roll is big.
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Aquila, and I live in the northeast section of the 7th Councilmatic District of Bridesburg. I am so happy and honored to be here with you today among these great people. At 18 years old, I knew that I had a strong connection to the independent living philosophy when I began advocating for my grandparents and neighbors. Since 2007, I have been a home care attendant. I became familiar with organizations like Liberty Resources, ADAPT, and Disabled in Action, and I am in awe of what they have accomplished. They are history makers. And I'm here today to ask the Mayor's Commission for People with Disabilities. I'm here to ask, when can I visit their accomplishments in the Disability Rights Museum of Philadelphia? It doesn't sound to me like $14,000 and all the other issues that this will ever get to the drawing board, but it should. Because when I walk down the halls of the center of the Independent Living Center, I want to share the history that hangs on the walls with more than the people that just walk through their doors. I want a museum to display those programs, those photographs, and I want Philadelphia youth to be inspired by their diversity. I want a place for the disabled community to showcase their talents, to entertain and educate the visitors of our city. I feel that the museum would embody the very meaning of independence and freedom, which is what Philadelphia's footprint is supposed to be, right? So I ask to please allocate funding and staff to form a committee with paid positions and volunteers so that we can get this on the table. Sign me up to be a volunteer. And can you please invite me to the ribbon cutting ceremony? I have experienced on a personal level a lot of shortcomings in regards to accommodating the disabled and ADA compliance. I asked the Commission to create a position of a liaison to work with Streets Department in future planning, especially when it comes to street work in our infrastructure. I'd like to give you an example. In my area, there are many seniors and disabled people who use walkers, canes, manual, and electric wheelchairs. Starting of September in this year, and it's still ongoing, there's a lot of work being done in my neighborhood. The Streets Department have been blocking curb cuts at entrances of doctors' offices and pharmacies. We need a liaison in the planning process before more people get hurt, and I know of a few that have. I'm responsible for my consumer and their safety. I need to get her to the doctors. I realize that this work needs to be done, but does it have to be done simultaneously at two important intersections where it's impossible to get my consumer past Thompson and Orthodox Street? And the alternate way via Thompson and Lefevre was blocked also. The sidewalks were roped off. The streets and the payments were uneven. The situation was so bad that I had to cancel the appointment when she asked me to. There was no alternative route, even if we took the long way. They should at least put something down to make the ground level. And in closing, I would just like to say that I called Visit Philadelphia because I have family members coming in from Boston. And when I said that I have, a few disabled members, one visually impaired and one deaf, they really couldn't help me because the guided tour bus didn't have enough wheelchair accommodations. They didn't have a deaf interpreter to sign in the guided tour or at the historical sites. And someone suggested that rather than take the bus, tour guide bus, that we should maybe call Freedom Taxi or an Uber. This way we could take our time, and when we arrived at the historical site, that maybe we could nicely ask the tour guide to face the person who had issues with hearing, and that perhaps they could read lips. That did not satisfy me. In closing, I don't want Philadelphia to be on the list of cities that need to catch up, but I want the city to lead and set an example for the best city to offer situations to people with disabilities they can be proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Schroed.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Schroed, and I'm a longtime activist with ADAPT. I'm also a member of Liberty Resources, and I'm a board member on Liberty Resources board, and I am a person with a disability, both physical and mental disabilities. The issue I wanted to bring up is housing, and it's the biggest obstacle that we have for living independently. Liberty Resources has been getting people out of nursing homes for 25 years. Every year, we have about 150 people waiting to get out of nursing homes every year. Philadelphia has had a housing boom with condos, luxury townhomes for the rich and the able-bodied. Many people with disabilities have been living in substandard housing, and as gentrification comes, it forces people with disabilities out of homes that were already not accessible and affordable, and either onto the streets or into institutions. Many families have been broken up and separated, forced apart because of the lack of affordable, accessible housing. Mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters, children are separated because there is no housing in this city. 25% of the population of Philadelphia are people with disabilities, and they live far below the national poverty level. People with disabilities are never counted as homeless when they live in institutions, as many are forced into nursing homes. They are homeless because nobody really wants to live in a nursing home. And you don't live in a nursing home, you wait to die in a nursing home. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we have the right to live in the most integrated setting in the least restrictive environment. And Philadelphia has blatantly ignored this. Instead of housing, the city of Philadelphia gives us warehousing. We've been trying to get Philadelphia Nursing Home closed for years. Philadelphia just ignores us. You talk about people being differently abled, likening people with no hair as somehow being disabled, facing challenges. How many short-bald men are denied housing and education or being forced into institution for the lack of hair or the lack of height? Not many. How many of them are being denied their equal rights? As a disabled community, we define ourselves, and we do not get defined by the ruling class. We need a mayor's commission on people with disabilities that has clout and power and that can help address these issues that we face, especially homelessness. We need a city that cares for our rights, especially our right to housing, affordable and accessible housing. It shouldn't be for the rich, but it should be for all people. Philadelphia was the cradle of liberty, and now it's the city that exists for the rich and the able-bodied. Philadelphia has the blueprint for the new America of Donald Trump, a city where the rich matter and that the poor and the disabled are trod underfoot and tossed away like human garbage. We want you to show us that you really care and not give us tokenism. We need a commission for people with disabilities that is hobbled and not rendered ineffective. We need a well-funded office of people with disabilities that can really do the job of representing the voice of the people with disabilities in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Blake is next, and then Mr. Acosta, if you could come up to the podium.
My name is Austin Alfonso Blake. I'm a military veteran. I reside at 4113-43 Warren Street, apartment 302, Philly, PA 19104. First, I'd like to say that right now I'm suffering from elder abuse from my case manager, the property manager at my apartment complex. My psychiatrist at the VA hospital has me on 16 different medications. I am paranoid schizophrenic. I suffer from PTSD, insomnia, and generalized anxiety disorder. It makes me nervous, anxious. I pee on myself, I pee in the streets, I pee on doors, I pee in the hospital, I pee outside the hospital, I pee on the floor, I pee in apartment complexes, I pee everywhere. Right now I'm clean, I'm washed up, I'm clean. I took a shower up to this morning before I came out of shelter. Right now I'm currently at St. John's Hospice, a shelter for homeless people of Philadelphia, for homeless men. My case manager, John Brady, and the property manager, Susan Cohen, of Colonial Property Management, Powelton Heights, at apartment 4113-43 Warren Street, came into my apartment and ransacked it and stole my birth certificate. It's elder abuse. I'm an elder, I'm 51 years of age. I'm a veteran. I served with Commissioner Ross as a medic in the 104 Cav, paid National Guard from 1986 to 1996. He's my brother, he's my elder, he's my friend, he's my confidant, and I pray for him and his city. But this city should be ashamed of itself. It calls itself a city of brotherly love and sincere affection, but it's ashamed of the crimes against blacks, whites, Hispanics, males, females. The judges of this city should be ashamed of themselves. The senators, everyone is sinning. It's wrong. It's wrong. It has to stop. You know better. You're adults. Act like it. The sin, the wrong, the violence has to stop. The shooting, the killing has to stop. God doesn't like it. He's angry at this city because this is Jerusalem. This is God's holy city. Act like it. God is angry. He's mad. He has pronounced judgment on this city. He means business. It's going to be evil. It's going to be killing. It's going to be wickedness by God. His judgment fall on this city. It has to stop. You know better. You're adults. You know how to act like adults. What's wrong is wrong. What's right is right. Be good citizens. Pay your bills. Pay your rent. Clean the city. Do your job. You know better. I'm suffering from PTSD and mental illness right now. I'm sick. I've been sick in 4 days. I take my medication in 4 days because it makes me sick. It makes me paranoid. It makes me upset. It makes me angry because of the side effects of the medication. I take Prolixin. I get an injection in my arm every month from the VA hospital. A vein injection in my arm, right on my left arm. It's a 125 milligram injection. I take medication for my mind and my body. I was mugged this year up on Lancaster Avenue where I live at by 6 black juveniles. They beat me up and took cans in my back. I called the cops from the Chinese store. They did nothing. I went home. I called my uncle in Providence, Rhode Island. He's a doctor. He's a professor. He told me to call the cops right away. I called the cops. They showed up 2 hours later and did nothing. They took a report and did nothing. These cops who are crooked are bad. They should be ashamed of themselves. The white cops, the black cops are bad. The city should be ashamed of themselves. They need to be evicted from their job and fired right away. Commissioner Ross has to do something for these bad cops. They're both white and black. They're good cops, but also they're bad cops. And they have to be wearing out. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. After Mr. Acosta, I'm going to call the following people, if you can start coming close to the podium. Deja Giddings, Leslie Farrell, Karen Burrison, Joyce Ferraria, and Robin Curd.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Councilman Green, for having this forum, because it's long overdue. Basically, I'm looking at the aspect of it's a multitude of issues that need to be addressed, and of course you can't do everything overnight, but this is a good start. Now, the problem that I have is in the general aspect of, let's break it down like this. The general election and the primary election, we all know that it equates to dollars depending on how many voters vote in each district throughout the city as well. So we have, I think it was, what was the number? 190,000 disabled individuals within the city of Philadelphia. Now the other issue is this. Now with that type of number, you know, you have a lot of dollars flowing in each one of the districts. But when you look at the voter registration, I mean the amount of people that voted per district, they don't even have an accountability of how many people actually voted that was disabled, whether they might be deaf, hearing impaired, deaf, wheelchair bound, crutches, or whatever else. Now, you have to have them type of numbers to really equate to how many dollars need to be accountable to each district to really balance out the aspect of how much money do you give a department such as Mr. Horton's department, so that way when you're looking at how much dollars do we equate 14,000 and how much more we need to give them, you need to look at per district how many disabled people voted on the registry to really understand how how to link up the dollars along with the districts to really look at the aspect of knowing how much money to put in per district. Because unless you really look at the numbers really hard and really understand how to economically break down the numbers in that particular way, the city is always going to fall on a shortcoming if they don't really start looking at the hard numbers in each district that carries, each individual that might be disabled. So in the aspect of really understanding that, it really has to be looked at in that type of frame to really understand, because like many people in here said, you can't have Mr. Horton carry a whole aspect of disabled individuals and really think his department is going to be efficient if he's the only one doing it. It has to be multitude of individuals that have, that's multi-intelligent in several different areas that need to be assisting him in regards to really making an efficient department to really being a progressive city. If you're talking about being a progressive city, then you gotta give, number one, you gotta give the budget to make it look that way. And then you got to hire the staff that's disabled, non-disabled, to really make it an efficient department to really say, wow, Philadelphia is really that brotherly love city that's really looking at their disabled population and really taking them seriously. Because right now, if you look at Philadelphia where it is, they're not taking anything on the disabled aspect seriously. I hear a lot of conversation, and this is a beginning step, don't get me wrong, but if we're always talking about a progressive city, we got to step the game up a lot faster than what we're doing, in regards to it. And, like I said, I'm willing to work with city council in that, because I'm already working on policy legislation in regards to that. And I'm also looking to run for the State House in regards to it, just to put it out there. But I'm definitely, this is a long aspect overdue. And, I really want to tackle this right away, and I would really like to sit down with your office and everyone else to really craft out the numbers from district levels to really put the dollars in there that's really going to make it an effective outreach situation. And Mr. Horton also needs an outreach coordinator or many coordinators to really go out on the street level, whereas if he's in the office or whatever else, he needs that outreach from businesses that's not in compliance. Because I've been in many restaurants that I can't even get in the door because they got steps, they don't have no ramps and whatever else. I got a wife, children. We can't even go out to a restaurant because they say, oh, we don't have handicap accessibility. So I got to sit outside while my kids and my wife is inside the restaurant to eat. Come on, that's just human dignity and respect, in regards to it. And then some of the restaurant owners don't even really care. They like, okay, well, tough, we just don't have it. So and you got some SEPTA issue drivers that are not complying with stopping, picking up wheelchairs, and they have multitude aspect of space to put them on the bus. Now I understand if it's overcrowded, but if you're not overcrowded, you got some drivers that say, look, I'm behind time. I don't have time, just catch the next bus. Well, if it's perfect weather, that's fine. But if you got snow, rain, and all that, don't nobody want to be stuck out there on purpose, and you got enough time to take them on the bus and put them on the bus. It just needs to be an aspect of respect on human dignity, and stop looking at people with disabilities as, oh, okay, I'm gonna just deal with you because I have to, or at the time I'm just going to deal with it for this moment. But the minute that the cameras ain't there, the minute that members like you aren't in their face, then it's like, I ain't worried about them bunking. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Miss, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Karen Barrison, spelled Karen. It's not on. I'll wait till you. All right. My name is Karen Barrison, it's spelled KarenBurrison. I am a Liberty consumer, a DAT member, a DIA member, but today I'm here just as a resident of Philadelphia and a mother. Recently, as 2 weeks ago, I was at my church. I took classes at my church. My chair was going dead, and the people that usually we do have a disabled van, a disabled church van, but the guys who worked the van were there, but they disappeared. They went home, and I had basically no other way of getting home because my chair was dead. And I did not go anywhere that day knowing that I had to come to class, and for whatever reason my chair just went down. And I did take the bus. I was going to take the bus there and back. But the fact is, I had to get one of the workers there to come up with, devise a plan how they're going to get me home, because I was literally stuck. So she knew another member who has an account with Uber, so they call Uber. So they come, for whatever reason, there's communication problems, because even though they told Uber that I was in a power chair, they sent a regular car first. Can I get in the car with the chair? Then they leave. So then they send another car. Now I know they have, I don't know, car, either a lift or a van, a ramp or whatever. No, they sent a hatchback. The seats in the car went down. What they had to do was, can the chair fold up? No, the chair cannot fold up. It cannot break down. They got me in the front seat. They had to literally take the chair and put it inside the back of the car. Up and however they could not break it down. And another girl had to come home with me to get me out the car, back in the chair and into my house. Okay, so there's to be more communication with whoever is calling for the ride, even though they're saying this person is in a power chair or a manual chair or death or whatever. So they had to literally come home with me, because I live up East Falls. I live up 3 hills. I would not have made it home that night on Saturday. I took the bus. I had to go from Ridge Avenue all the way up to my house, which is 3 steep hills. I would not have made it if they did not give me a ride home. Okay, that's my transportation piece. I'm also here under education. I got my education, from 9th to 12th, I got my education here in Philly. Went to Weiner, My kids were born here in Philly. They got the education here in Philly. When Dr. Height came into office, we all had that budget breakdown. There was no money for schools or whatever. They closed most of the schools down. My school, the one that my daughter went to from kindergarten to second grade, got closed down. And I was the only mother that's disabled in the neighborhood. So and the school is right around the corner. It's Joseph Ferguson School, 7th and Norris. For whatever reason, my daughter loved that school. I went to one of those closing meetings. I wasn't going to say nothing, but something inside of me said, go up there and speak. So I did. And all of the parents, all of the neighborhood moms know me. They watched out for me because they knew I was in this wheelchair going back and forth. Whether it was snowing, whether it was raining, it did not matter. I got my child to school every day without paratransit, without the buses. I can't depend on them. So they cheered. So when I came up to speak, I have a speech impediment problem. They turned off the timer thingy because I explained. I told Dr. Height, before I get into my speech, let me show you how I take my child to school. The moms cheered me on, got my daughter up there, because my daughter had to stand on the back of my wheelchair. And I rolled the chair to school every day. I went from one end of one end of the room to the other end of the room in my chair with her on her back. I said, this is how I get her to school every day. Whether it's snowing, raining, whatever. So when I told him, personally, you could burn that school down as far as I cared. But I told him, if you're going to keep it up, and y'all need to do something for the disabled, because I know I'm not the only one in this community that's disabled that has kids here, because I cannot get in for report card period. If they had a show, I could not see my daughter in the show because it has steps. She did a summer school wherever there. The guy came and got me from my house to bring me over to the school. They took me out on my chair. They probably tied the chair to the gate because people stealing stuff, even wheelchairs. They got me into a manual chair, and a manual brought me up steps inside the school, then brought me back down steps to the cafeteria double as they were doing a play. That's the only time I ever been in that school. I got 3 kids. So I told him, this is how I recently moved from where I used to live in North Philly to when they closed it, I homeschooled her from September to December, because the only other school was Hartram down about 3 blocks. So in the bad weather, I wouldn't be able to get her down there. Then the only other school was McKinley, which was on Diamond Street. That school was considered out of my district. So I ended up calling down to Spring Garden and telling them I'm in a wheelchair. I gotta get my daughters to school regardless if I take transportation or not. The only other school that's in my neighborhood they consider out of my district, which I can roll to. I could get her there every day by rolling in my chair there. So I called the school. They said, "Well, we're full. We're full." So, but when I got on the phone to the Board of Education and talked to whoever, the guy called the principal and made her put my daughter in school there for 2 years. But then come around the next year, they opened up the same school that they closed, Ferguson, as a high school, because now they call it the youth school. That, in my mind, that did not make any sense at all. You go from kindergarten to 8th grade, but you have trouble with your budget, so you close it down. But you reopen it as a high school. If you're gonna close it down and keep it closed. But if you're gonna reopen it, you need to, one, rehab it for the disabled. And I told him, come to me, please. I will show you how to do it. I will get you in touch with people who know how to do it. 'Cause I got my back up. I can go to my people and we will show you how to rehab a school. So, but we opened it up anyway. So but then now I have moved. I have found a school into the city, which she will be going to from now until 12th grade, thank God. So here's my testimony in detail. I don't know if you have it already or not. So if somebody could give this to him, thank you, please.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony.
Who's that there?
Sir, if you could just state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Leslie Farrell. Hey, I'm a supports coordinator at Liberty Resources, Liberty Connections. I've worked 30 years in this field of social services. I've worked almost 9 years here at Liberty. I want to say that the people that I serve in my 9 years here are some of the finest people that I have ever known in my life. And I feel it's a privilege for me to work at Liberty and to serve. And the thing that gives me the most pride is that I always want them to know that that I have their back, and I'll always be there, not to pity or string them along. I will always be there to make them the best person they can be. I see myself as not as a sign that says blind. See, I see myself, and this is the way I was trained. And I say trained at the schools I went to, training schools, most of my life. I see myself as a guy who just happens to be blind, just happens to have a disability. There is a difference. I also want to say that I had the most profound experience last year. I was walking, and I'll get to the other stuff too, but I was walking to work. I was at City Hall, and I was walking through the tunnel that takes you from City Hall to 11th Street, walking east. I was running to this tunnel, or walked through the tunnel. I was at the 13th Street L stop. I had a little more sight a year ago, but there was a group of people walking in single file, and they had shades on, and they had canes. And I looked at this, and I said, I don't know, this is a bit strange. So I went to the person who was at the head, and he said, well, we're all SEPTA employees, And what we're doing is all new employees have to have a certain number of time wearing the sleep shades and the cane to see what it is like to be, visually impaired, disabled. I said to the person, well, that's progress. That's something good. I said to him, can you tell these people and tell all the employees, you guys can take off those shades and you can put this cane away and you're back in population. I cannot. Think about it. So, on to the other stuff. Two things. My experiences, you see, as a sports coordinator was visually impaired. One, SEPTA. I think that my experiences with SEPTA, some good, some not so good. But, see, I always take it upon myself to be proactive in that I always let the drivers know my destination, and I ask them twice, am I getting close to it? So in other words, also, I make sure that there's a certain line on the bus where you stand to the left of it, so that you're legal. So this way, the drivers know I'm doing my part, that I'm not trying to ask for special pity or special consideration, even though, certainly. And the two seats on the buses are ADA compliant seats. People have to get up if a disabled person with disability comes on board. But my way is, I would rather stand for an hour rather than make a person who's old, infirm, tired, just sitting there, make them get up for even 1 second. I'll stand. I'm strong enough to stand. I will stand. So, the thing I want to say, though, is also, in terms of this city, mobility. Sure, I always consider myself, I always say to people, don't judge all visually impaired people by me, because I've had the privilege of having very extensive training in different states, you see. So, but it is not easy, because out here, as in any city, there are always hazards, cones, people stopping in front of you, back, all types of things. But I was always raised to believe, and I will say this too, I noticed that some people, many people, he kind of said what many people were thinking. They know what it feels like to be judged, to not be treated well. Going in stores, having people judge you. I mean, when I had my sight, sure, I felt that. But I say this to each person who goes through this, goes through rejection, not being treated well. Always remember the philosopher Nietzsche. Remember what he said, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. In closing, I want to say this. There is a Chinese word in the Chinese language. It's a word that means danger, but it also means opportunity. I say to you, you good people here in your commission, you good people, use this as your opportunity to take the information which has been given to you. Mr. Earl gave you information. The people here today spoke volumes, information. But always remember the stories behind those words and those numbers. See, because behind every word and every number, there are people who live their lives and who go through these things. I also ask you, do the thing that has been repeated. Do you remember that what someone once said to me, that if you hear something often enough, you hear it, it must have some importance. Something that has come up with many people saying, look at what people are doing in other cities. Look at the things that are working. Look at some of the things that, might need improvement. But look at those things and use this as an opportunity to take this city from down there and to bring it up and make this city strong. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Miss, if you can state your name for the record.
Sure. Kellyanne Murray?
Kelly and Mary. Okay, and then we also, is Deja getting?
Yeah, I was going to say, I wanted to thank her. I'm taking her spot.
Spot,
She isn't
okay.
here today. And
Joyce Ferreira?
Huh?
Okay, and then Robin Curio.
Yeah.
If the last people who are testifying could come up to the podium.
Can I go or? Okay. Well, first of all, I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to listen. I'm sure you realize one of our major issues is affordable, accessible housing. I just wanted to give a very personal picture of that. I'm low income. I haven't been able to work since my symptoms of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and Chiari malformation started in 2009. I have needed, in 2012, I had an accident after lower spinal cord surgery that left me unable to lift my legs, therefore get into a place that was, has steps. So my biggest problem then wasn't that I couldn't, lift my legs anymore, it was that I had nowhere to live. And so being homeless, it was just a struggle to find housing, and the waiting lists are so long. I got through the back door with the help from Liberty Resources, and the housing I got was PHA in North Philly. When I went there, both elevators were broken. They asked me, if I wanted the apartment. I'm like, well, I can't even see it. And they said, well, if you don't take it, you're going to go back on the wait list, and it could take up to like 7 years. So I took it. The housing, it was on fire a lot, sometimes almost every month. I was on the 6th floor. With the fires, I could get down, people carried me, but there were people in power chairs that did not fit in the stairwell, so they were trapped up there. Even when the building wasn't on fire, the elevators were off just from people messing with them a lot, so I was trapped. A lot of the time, I could not do my laundry. People would come in and urinate in the machines. My mailbox was broken into. I started being stalked. There were people outside my doors. I put in multiple police reports, had doctors requiring medical transfers for me to get out of that building, but all which were denied because there was no housing available. So currently, I moved into non-affordable, originally non-accessible housing that a ramp was built, but it's still a very rough situation because I can't afford my bills, being low income and just trying to live in a world that's not really set up right for me. So I'm just really hoping that housing, safe housing, is made available so I'll have somewhere to go. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
How you doing? My name is Keno Johnson. I've been living in the city here now for about 9 years, and before that I was living in Florida before my accident. The stuff that I've heard today has changed what I wanted to say a lot, but I'm just going to try to touch on a couple things. Is, of course, housing. That I'm lucky that my parents are still around me to help me out with everything, and even though the house outside, my dad has to come out and physically pull down a ramp for me to go in and to come out, I'm lucky that I've got my parents there and I can live in a corridor of the house before my kitchen, because there's nothing else. And that, even though my grandma's there, she's old, there's more money than others have to get things done in the house, bills, of course, and all that. So I'm pretty fortunate there. Of course, there's taxi problems. You want a taxi, they're gonna send you a regular car most of the time. It happens all the time when you're dealing with a lot of different companies, and they always send you pretty much always send you a car first that they don't know. And even though you go into in-depth things with them and you tell them, what's going on. Something always gets lost in translation somehow, and we're speaking the same language. I don't know. There's something that I didn't hear about here, and it's drug problems. And most people in wheelchairs know, and they go through, a lot of pills throughout the day. I do. I take a lot of pills throughout the day, and I saw the marijuana legalization as a good way to get off of a lot of pills I'm on. But, there ain't nothing going on right there right now. At least that's what I've heard from all the people I've talked to, that we gotta wait and everything, and they wanna give us weed in pill forms and in oil forms when some people might not see that as natural. We need the bud form. The bud form is one of the best forms and the more natural forms that a lot of people see, and that's not what was, that's not what came through. So there's that, and you can get addicted to these pills, fairly easy. A lot of people know, especially, the opiates and everything, and there's a easy way to get off of them, and there's marijuana, and there could be a lot of help from the disabled community to help people that are addicted, talk. There's always things that we can help compare and contrast, and maybe help people that were addicted to heroin and stuff, and maybe try to get the marijuana to help them get off of it, because I've seen in a couple places in the U.S. where they've done that, and it helps a lot of people. So that's pretty much all I want to say.
Thank you for your testimony. Just to let you know, I know you're probably aware of this as well, that in April of this year, Governor Wolf signed the medical marijuana legislation into law in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I had introduced both a resolution for hearings in May of this year. We had those hearings in September. And then a few weeks ago, I introduced a medical marijuana bill here in Philadelphia that just got voted out of committee today. So hopefully that'll be moving forward towards final passage. That will help some of the people that you talked about who have become addicted to opioids or other type of much severe medication trying to deal with pain and suffering. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to testify on this bill? On this resolution? Is there anyone else here to testify on this resolution? I want to thank everyone for coming. We will be continuing this conversation and this discussion. One of the goals of this hearing was to address a lot of the issues, especially from a funding perspective, regarding issues and trying to put the commission in a better stance as compared to other cities. Some of the other issues that you've raised from the Philadelphia Nursing Home, which we anticipate having hearings on that topic in the future, and some of the other issues you brought up are all very important, especially when it comes to housing and some of the other concerns. And these are very important issues that, as we go into the budget cycle starting in January of next year, we can raise these issues with the various departments on some of these issues as they pertain to accessibility issues for people that live in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you for your time. I know this was a long hearing, but I think it was very informative because it provided a good opportunity for people to voice their issues and concerns in a way they've not had an opportunity in the past. So thank you. Okay. If you guys just state your name for the record, just for the stenographer.
My name is Herman Perotti. In the agenda of today's hearing, it read that after the hearing, the committee was going to conduct a meeting publicly to discuss the matter at hand. And I understand because of the time, that will be at a time. So for our community, I cannot reach out to everyone that's here that came. So for their knowledge, what are the next steps from here?
Well, I guess from this perspective, from next steps, what we can try to do, and I'll talk with Dwayne Tennant from our office, who's been helping to coordinate, that we can have maybe a strategy session going forward to kind of discuss similar to what we had in the early part of this year when I first came in as chair to kind of talk about some of these issues. So I think we can use that as an ongoing methodology to strategize as we go into the budget session. So I think you have Dwayne's contact information because I think he spoke with everyone who testified. So we'll go from there to try and schedule something, if not in December, which may be a little challenging, but maybe early part next year, which should give us time as we get ready for the budget season.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's what we wanted to
Thank
know.
you.
Thank you for your time.
And with that, this resolution will be called to the chair. Yeah. So we'll recess this hearing to the call of the chair. Thank you.
Thank you.